The Nevada desert has a specific kind of silence. It is not the peaceful silence of a library or the hushed reverence of a church. It is a predatory silence. It is the silence of things watching you, waiting for the heat to strip your bones clean. I gripped the steering wheel of the rented Ford Mustang, my knuckles white against the black leather. The air conditioning was blasting, fighting a losing war against the shimmering heat waves rising off Interstate 15. But I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. "Mom, stop gripping the wheel like you're trying to strangle it." Olivia laughed from the passenger seat. I blinked, the trance broken. I looked over at her. Olivia, my Livy, 19 years old. She had her bare feet on the dashboard. Her toenails painted a shade of blue that reminded me of a sky I hadn't seen since I was deployed in the Mediterranean. Her blonde hair was a chaotic mess. Whipped by the wind from the window she kept cracking open despite my protests. She looked so much like her father in that light, the same sharp jawline. The same reckless optimism. "I'm just driving, Liv," I said, forcing my hands to relax. "Defensive driving. It's a habit." "It's not a habit, Michelle Carter. It's a lifestyle," she teased, taking a sip of her iced coffee. "We are going to Vegas. Las Vegas, the playground of the world. You need to switch off the special ops mode and switch on the cool mom mode." Remember her? She promised me a weekend of shopping, shows, and zero paranoia. I forced a smile. I remember. I promised. And I had. This was supposed to be our celebration. Olivia had just finished her first year of college with honors. She was studying graphic design, creating beautiful things in a world I knew was inherently ugly. She was the light at the end of a very long, very dark tunnel that constituted the last 20 years of my life. I am Michelle Carter. To the PTA moms back in Ohio. I am a fitness instructor who teaches aggressive kickboxing classes. To the government of the United States. I am a redacted file. A ghost from a dissolved unit within the Joint Special Operations Command. I spent a decade hunting bad men in the mountains of Afghanistan and the back alleys of Syria. I learned how to disassemble a Glock 19 in the dark. I learned how to stop a human heart with a precise strike to the carotid artery. But looking at Olivia, innocent and glowing in the afternoon sun, I realized the hardest thing I ever had to learn was how to be a mother. "Look," Olivia pointed ahead. Through the heat haze, it rose like a mirage. The Strip, a cluster of glass and steel piercing the sky, defying the emptiness of the desert. Even from miles away, you could feel the pulse of it, the promise of instant fortune, the scent of expensive perfume masking the smell of desperation. The Emerald Palace. Olivia sighed, checking her phone. "Are you sure we can afford 2 nights there? It looks intense." I saved up. I lied. The money came from a rainy day fund I kept in a floor safe. Leftover cash from a contracting job in Bogotá that went sideways 3 years ago. Blood money. Laundered into a luxury suite for my daughter. Nothing but the best for you. As we drove into the city, the sun began to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in violent shades of purple and bruised orange. The lights of the casinos flickered on, millions of artificial stars designed to make you forget that time existed. We pulled up to the valet at the Emerald Palace. It was a monstrosity of black glass and gold trim, radiating an aura of untouchable wealth. The valet, a young kid who looked tired, opened my door. I stepped out, my eyes automatically scanning the perimeter. Force of habit, exit points, revolving doors, side maintenance entrance, threat assessment, 2 security guards by the fountain. Armed. Bored. One man in a suit talking into an earpiece. Focused. Crowd density. Hi. Mom. Olivia whispered, nudging me. Stop scanning the perimeter. You're doing the thing with your eyes. Sorry, I murmured, grabbing our bags. Let's check in. The lobby was a sensory assault. The sound of slot machines, that melodic, hypnotic ding ding ding, filled the air. The smell was a mix of ozone, cigarettes, and vanilla pumped through the vents. Tourists swarmed everywhere, a river of humanity flowing around the gaming tables. We got our room keys. Suite 402, high enough to see the view, low enough to repel from the balcony if the elevators were compromised. Stop it, Michelle, I scolded myself. Just be a mom. The room was spectacular. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Bellagio fountains. Olivia immediately threw herself onto the king-sized bed, laughing. This is insane. Thank you, Mom. Seriously. She sat up, her face suddenly serious. I know it hasn't been easy. You doing this, alone. Raising me. I sat beside her, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. My hands were rough, scarred from knives and ropes, contrasting with her soft skin. You made it easy. Liv, you're the best thing I've ever done. I'm going to shower and change, Olivia announced, jumping up. Then, dinner. And then, we hit the strip. I want to see the volcano show. Sounds like a plan. I'm going to go down to the lobby, grab some water bottles and confirm our dinner reservation. Meet you back here in 30 minutes? 30 minutes. She agreed. Don't get lost. I never get lost, I said, walking to the door. I wish I had hugged her then. I wish I had held her tight enough to bruise, just to imprint the feeling of her safety into my soul. But I didn't. I just smiled, closed the door, and walked to the elevator. That was the mistake, the variable I didn't account for, the assumption of safety. I went down to the lobby. I bought 2 bottles of Fiji water and a packet of aspirin for the headache building behind my eyes. I checked with the concierge about the table at the steakhouse. Everything was perfect. I looked at my watch. 20 minutes had passed. I decided to head back up early to surprise her. The elevator ride to the 4th floor was smooth and silent. The hallway was carpeted in thick, plush velvet that dampened the sound of my footsteps. I reached room 402. I swiped the keycard. The light turned green. I pushed the door open. Liv? I got the water. Silence. Not the predatory silence of the desert. This was different. This was the vacuum silence of an aftermath. The room was empty. The shower was running in the bathroom, steam billowing out. Olivia? I dropped the water bottles. They rolled across the floor with a dull thud. I walked to the bathroom. My hand went to the small of my back, reaching for a weapon that wasn't there. I wasn't carrying. I was a tourist. I was defenseless. I pushed the bathroom door fully open. The shower was running hot, steam clouding the mirror. A towel was on the floor. But Olivia wasn't there. Olivia, I shouted, my voice bouncing off the marble tiles. I spun around, scanning the main room again. That's when I saw it. The detail a civilian would miss. The heavy glass ashtray on the bedside table had been moved 3 inches. A faint scuff mark on the carpet, the heel of a shoe dragged against the grain. And on the floor, near the balcony door, lay her phone. It was face down. I picked it up. The screen was cracked. A spiderweb of fractured glass over a picture of the 2 of us smiling at her graduation. My heart didn't race. My breath didn't hitch. Those are panic reactions. I don't panic. Instead, a cold, icy clarity washed over me. My vision sharpened. The room temperature seemed to drop 20 degrees. The world slowed down. I walked to the balcony door. It was unlocked. I looked over the railing. Nothing but the concrete ledge and the bustling street 4 stories down. I went back inside and knelt by her phone. I unlocked it. I knew her passcode. She never kept secrets from me. The last app open was Find My Friends. But there was a text message draft. Unsent. Mom, some guy is at the door. Says he's room service but. It stopped there. I stood up. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. Inhaling the air of the room. Beneath the hotel vanilla, I smelled it. Cheap cologne, musk and sandalwood, and something else. Ether. Faint. Chemical. Sweet. They took her. They came into my room. While I was buying water. And they took my daughter. The Michelle Carter who taught kickboxing classes in Ohio died in that moment. The mother who worried about tuition fees and grocery bills evaporated. The woman who opened her eyes was someone else entirely. I walked to my suitcase. I ripped the lining of the bottom shell. From the hidden compartment, I pulled out a small, black pouch. Inside was a ceramic knife, undetectable by metal detectors, and a burner phone I kept for emergencies. I dialed a number I hadn't called in 6 years. It rang once, twice. This line is dead. A male voice rasped. Don't call again. It's Banshee, I said, my voice void of any human emotion. I'm in Vegas. The asset has been compromised. Banshee? The voice hesitated. Jesus. Michelle. You've been out for years. What asset? My daughter. I said. They took my daughter. Silence on the other end. Then, police? No, I said, walking to the door. If I call the police, they file a report. They wait 24 hours. They check cameras. By then, she's gone. She's on a private plane or in a shipping container. Michelle, listen to me. Vegas isn't the sandbox. You can't just. I'm at the Emerald Palace. I interrupted. I need satellite overlay of the Strip. Facial rec on the hotel grid. And a list of every organized crime syndicate currently operating sex trafficking rings in Nevada. I need it in 5 minutes. Michelle, that's illegal. I can't authorize that. I'm a desk jockey now. I gripped the phone, staring at the cracked screen of Olivia's cell. 5 minutes. Jack, or I upload the files from the Aleppo operation to the New York Times. The files that prove you authorized the drone strike. A pause. A heavy sigh. 5 minutes. I hung up. I walked to the mirror. I looked at myself. I didn't see the wrinkles or the tired eyes. I saw the predator. I saw the wolf that had just found out its cub was stolen. Las Vegas thought it was a city of sharks. It thought it knew how to eat people alive. But it had never met me. I checked my watch. My daughter had been gone for 12 minutes. Statistically, in kidnapping cases, the first 3 hours are the golden window. After that, survival rates drop by 90%. I didn't have weapons. I didn't have a team. I didn't have backup. But I had rage. And I had a particular set of skills that made me a nightmare for people like this. I walked out of the room, leaving the "Do Not Disturb" sign on the door. The elevator dinged. I stepped in. There were 2 men inside. Large, wearing expensive suits that didn't fit right. Bulges under their left arms. Security? Or something else? They looked at me, dismissing me instantly. A frantic mother? A lost tourist? They didn't see the way I shifted my weight to the balls of my feet. They didn't notice me clocking the position of their throats. The hunt had begun. And I wasn't going to stop until Vegas burned to the ground or I had my daughter back in my arms. Going down? One of the men asked, a smirk playing on his lips. I looked him dead in the eye. All the way to hell, I whispered. The elevator descended. The numbers on the display ticked down, 4, 3, 2. Inside the small, mirrored box, the air was thick. The two men in suits were still staring at me. The one on the left, a heavy-set man with a thick gold chain, chuckled at my whisper. Hell? That's a bit dramatic, sweetheart, he sneered, leaning closer. The smell of whiskey and stale cigars rolled off him. You look like you need a drink. Why don't you ditch the attitude and join us at the High Limit Lounge? He reached out, his hand aiming for my arm. A meaty, presumptuous hand. In my old life, I would have broken his wrist in 3 places before his brain registered the pain. I would have collapsed his trachea. But I wasn't in Kandahar. I was in a glass box in a 5-star hotel. Cameras were everywhere. Discipline. Michelle. Focus on the mission. I didn't break his wrist. Instead, I stepped into his personal space. Faster than he expected, I locked eyes with him, a stare so devoid of life. So cold and empty, that it stopped him dead. Touch me, I said, my voice barely a murmur. And you will spend the rest of your life learning how to eat through a straw. The smile vanished from his face. The predator inside him recognized a bigger, more dangerous predator. He pulled his hand back as if burned. The elevator dinged. Ground floor. Crazy bitch, his friend muttered, but they hurried out, looking back over their shoulders. I stepped out into the chaos of the casino floor. The noise hit me like a physical wave. The ringing of slots, the cheers from the craps tables, the thumping bass of the club music. It was a sensory overload designed to confuse and distract. Perfect for a predator, perfect for a kidnapper. I needed eyes. I needed to see what happened in that hallway. I pulled out the burner phone. A text from Jack. Jack, I'm in the system. The Emerald Palace uses a closed-circuit localized server for floor security. I can't hack the cameras remotely without a bridge. You need to get to the security hub. Basement level 2. Basement level 2. The bowels of the beast. I moved through the crowd. I wasn't Michelle Carter, the tourist. I was a ghost. I moved in the blind spots of the crowd, slipping between groups of laughing girls in bachelorette sashes and elderly couples dragging oxygen tanks. I spotted a service door near the restrooms. Keycard access only. I waited. 3 seconds later, a waiter carrying a tray of empty martini glasses approached. As he swiped his card, I timed my stride. Just as the door began to click shut behind him, I caught it with the toe of my sneaker. I slipped inside. The glamour of Vegas died instantly. The service corridor was concrete, fluorescent lights, and the smell of industrial cleaner. I moved fast, following the signs for security, loss prevention. I reached a heavy steel door. No windows. A keypad lock. I didn't have time to hack it. I didn't have time to be subtle. I knocked. Hard. Housekeeping. I called out, pitching my voice to sound frantic. Someone's hurt. Please. The door buzzed and swung open. A security guard, a large man in a beige uniform, stepped out, looking annoyed. Lady, you can't be down here. He never finished the sentence. I stepped inside his guard, grabbing his lapel and pivoting. I swept his legs. He hit the concrete floor with a heavy thud. The wind knocked out of him. Before he could inhale to scream, I was on him, my knee pressed into his sternum, my hand clamped over his mouth. Sleep. I whispered. I applied pressure to the carotid artery. 5 seconds. His eyes rolled back. His body went limp. I dragged him into the room and locked the door. The security hub was a wall of monitors. Hundreds of screens showing every corner of the hotel. The elevators, the blackjack tables, the pool, the hallways. It was the eye of God. I sat in the chair, my fingers flying across the keyboard. I didn't know their software, but security systems were all the same. Recordings. Select floor 4. Time. 1800 to 1830. I found it. Camera 4B. The hallway outside our room. I watched, and my heart shattered into 1,000 razor-sharp pieces. On the screen, grainy but clear enough, I saw the door to room 402 open. A cart. Room service. A man pushing it. He wore a standard uniform, but his cap was pulled low. He knocked. The door opened. I saw Olivia. She was smiling. She said something. She thought it was a mistake. Or maybe a surprise I had ordered. She turned her back to get her purse. The man moved. Fast. Too fast for a waiter. He lunged into the room. A second man, who had been hiding in the stairwell alcove, rushed in behind him. The door closed. I stared at the timecode. 18 hours 14 minutes and 20 seconds. The door remained closed for 3 minutes. 18 hours 17 minutes and 15 seconds. The door opened. The cart came out. It looked heavier now. There was a large laundry bag on the bottom shelf. Bulging. Olivia, my baby, was in the bag. I zoomed in on the first man. As he turned to push the cart toward the service elevator, the camera caught his neck. A tattoo. Small. Dark ink. A scorpion with a bifurcated tail. I took a picture of the screen with my burner phone and sent it to Jack. Me. ID this. Now. I kept watching. They took the service elevator down to the loading dock. I switched cameras. Loading dock BA black van was waiting. No license plates. They threw the laundry bag into the back. The man with the scorpion tattoo hopped in the passenger seat. The van sped off into the Vegas night. I paused the video. I zoomed in on the driver. He was blurry, but the man with the tattoo. I saw his face. Sharp features. A scar running through his left eyebrow. He was laughing. He was laughing while he stole my life. My phone buzzed. Jack. Tattoo belongs to the Desert Scorpions, a mid-level cartel enforcement gang. They run drugs and girls between Vegas and Tijuana. The guy in the pic is Nico Vance. Real piece of work. Multiple warrants for assault, kidnapping, trafficking. PD can't make anything stick. Me. Location? Jack. He's a shift boss. He usually hangs out at a club called The Inferno on Fremont Street. Michelle. If the Scorpions have her, she's not being held for ransom. She's product. You have maybe 12 hours before she's moved across the border. 12 hours. Panic tried to claw its way up my throat. A cold, dark sludge. If she went across the border, she was gone. I would never find her. She would become a statistic. I stood up. I looked at the unconscious guard on the floor. I took his taser and his radio. I wasn't a mother anymore. I wasn't a human being. I was a weapon forged in the fires of conflict. And I had been reactivated. I left the security room. I didn't sneak this time. I walked with purpose. I took the stairs up to the lobby level. Then out the side exit. The valet stand was busy. I didn't wait for my rental car. I saw a sleek, black Ducati motorcycle parked near the front, likely belonging to a high roller or a show-off. The valet was distracted by a shouting match between a drunk couple. I walked up to the bike. I knew how to hotwire a Ducati. It took me less than 10 seconds to bypass the ignition. The engine roared to life, a guttural, angry scream that matched the one inside my chest. I kicked the kickstand up. Hey, you can't do that, the valet shouted, running towards me. I revved the engine, the back tire spinning, smoke rising. Put it on my tab, I yelled. I peeled out of the driveway, merging onto the strip, weaving between taxis and limousines. The wind whipped my face, drying the tears I hadn't realized I was crying. Fremont Street, the old Vegas, the gritty, dirty, neon-soaked heart of the city. That's where the monsters lived. And I was coming to burn their house down. The Inferno was a dive bar masquerading as a nightclub. It sat on a corner, pulsing with red light. A line of people waited outside, hoping to get in. Bouncers with necks like tree trunks crossed their arms, judging the clientele. I parked the bike in the alleyway. I checked the taser I stole. 1 cartridge, 1 shot. I needed more. I looked around the alley. Trash cans, broken bottles, a discarded metal pipe. I picked up the pipe. It was heavy, rusted iron, about 2 feet long, crude, brutal, effective. I slipped it into the sleeve of my oversized denim jacket. I walked to the back entrance of the club. A steel door, 1 guard, smoking a cigarette, looking at his phone. He looked up as I approached. He saw a woman, middle-aged, blonde, looking lost. He saw prey. Lost, honey? VIP entrances around the front. Or maybe you're looking for a job. He leered, blowing smoke in my direction. I smiled, a sad, confused smile. I'm looking for Nico. The guard's eyes narrowed. Nico? Who's asking? His mother sent me, I said, closing the distance. His mother? He laughed. Nico's mom is dead. So are you, I said. I didn't use the pipe. Too loud. I stepped in, grabbed his wrist holding the cigarette, and twisted. The joint snapped with a wet crack. He opened his mouth to scream, but I drove the heel of my palm into his nose, driving bone into cartilage. Blood exploded. He stumbled back, clutching his face. I swept his legs and he went down. I knelt over him, my forearm pressing against his windpipe. Nico Vance, I hissed into his ear. Where is he? The guard gurgled, blood bubbling on his lips. He tried to reach for his belt. For a weapon. I tightened the pressure. The only thing that happens next is you die. Or you tell me. Nod if you want to live. He nodded frantically, his eyes bulging with terror. I eased the pressure slightly. Where? Inside, he wheezed. VIP booth. The back. Mezzanine. With the girls. Is there a girl? Blonde? 19? Blue dress? I don't know. Maybe. They brought a fresh batch an hour ago. Basement. Holding cells. Basement. My heart hammered against my ribs. She was here. She was in the building. I stood up. I kicked the guard in the temple, a precise, calculated blow to ensure he stayed down for at least an hour. I took his gun, a Smith & Wesson 9mm. Finally, a real weapon. I checked the mag. Full. 1 in the chamber. I took a deep breath. I'm coming. Livy. I opened the back door and stepped into the inferno. The music was deafening. The air smelled of sweat and cheap tequila. Bodies writhed on the dance floor under strobing red lights. I moved through the shadows, heading for the stairs to the mezzanine. I spotted him. Nico Vance. He was sitting in a circular booth, surrounded by 3 women who looked high and terrified. He was laughing, drinking from a bottle of champagne. The scorpion tattoo on his neck seemed to move as he threw his head back. He looked so comfortable, so safe. He had no idea that death had just walked through the door. I gripped the gun in my pocket, my finger hovering over the trigger. I could shoot him from here, put a bullet in his brain and end it. But if I killed him, I might lose the location of the other girls. I might lose the chain of command. I needed him alive, for a few minutes, at least. I made my way up the stairs. A bouncer stepped in my path. Private area. Lady. I didn't stop. I didn't slow down. I pulled the metal pipe from my sleeve and swung it in a savage arc. It connected with his kneecap. The sound of bone shattering was lost in the bass drop of the music. He collapsed. I stepped over him and walked into the VIP section. Nico looked up. He saw me. He saw the pipe in my left hand, the gun in my right. He didn't recognize me from the hotel, but he recognized the look in my eyes. The look of a mother who has nothing left to lose. "Who the hell are you?" he shouted, standing up, reaching for his waistband. I raised the gun. "I'm the consequences," I said. And then, I pulled the trigger. The gunshot was deafening. A sharp crack that cut through the thumping bass of the techno music like a thunderclap. I didn't aim for Nico's head. Not yet. A dead man can't talk. And I needed Nico Vance to sing. The bullet from the Smith & Wesson 9mm tore through his right kneecap. Nico screamed, a high, jagged sound that was immediately swallowed by the confusion of the club. His leg buckled, and he collapsed onto the sticky floor of the VIP booth. Clutching his shattered knee, the champagne bottle he was holding shattered, spraying glass and foam everywhere. For a split second, the club kept moving. The dancers on the floor below were in a trance, oblivious. But then the screams started. The girls in the booth with Nico scrambled back, their eyes wide with terror, crawling over the leather seats to get away. "Gun! She has a gun!" someone shrieked. The chaos was instant. The crowd on the dance floor surged like a tidal wave, bodies crushing against bodies in a frantic rush for the exits. The strobe lights kept flashing, red, blue, white, making the panic look like a stop-motion nightmare. I didn't look at the crowd. My world had narrowed to a tunnel. At the end of that tunnel was Nico Vance. Two bouncers, huge men in tight black t-shirts, rushed me from the sides. They were slow, lumbering. They were used to breaking up drunk college fights, not engaging a Tier 1 operator. The first one swung a heavy fist at my head. I ducked under the blow, the wind of it rushing past my ear. I stepped into his space, driving the iron pipe in my left hand into his solar plexus. He doubled over, gasping for air that wouldn't come. I brought the butt of the pistol down on the base of his skull. He dropped like a stone. The second one hesitated. He saw his partner fall. That hesitation was his mistake. I didn't wait. I fired a warning shot into the ceiling, shattering a mirrored disco ball. Shards of glass rained down on us like glitter. "Back off!" I roared, my voice cutting through the din. He backed off, hands raised, disappearing into the fleeing crowd. I holstered the gun in the back of my waistband and grabbed Nico by the collar of his expensive silk shirt. I dragged him up. He was heavy, dead weight, sobbing in pain. "My leg. You shot my damn leg," he wailed, his face pale and sweaty. I slammed him back against the velvet wall of the booth. I pressed the cold iron pipe against his throat, cutting off his air. "Focus, Nico," I said, my voice calm, terrifyingly steady. "Pain is information. Your body is telling you that you are dying. Do you want to live? He nodded frantically, his eyes bulging. Where is the girl? The blonde. Olivia. Where is she? I don't know. I don't. I pressed harder. The pipe crushed against his windpipe. He gagged, his face turning purple. Wrong answer. I whispered. I saw the van. I saw you. You took her. If you lie to me again, I will shatter your other knee. And then I will start on your fingers. One by one. Basement, he wheezed. The basement. We hold them there. Processing. Processing? The word made my blood turn to ice. What does that mean? For the auction. The high rollers, tonight. Take me there. I can't walk. I grabbed his hair and yanked his head forward. Then crawl. I let him go. He slumped to the floor, dragging himself toward the service door at the back of the VIP section. I followed him, my gun drawn again, scanning the mezzanine. The club was emptying out. But I knew the Desert Scorpions would have reinforcements coming. I had minutes, maybe seconds. We reached the service door. Nico punched in a code with trembling fingers. The door beeped and clicked open. Beyond was a concrete stairwell leading down into darkness. The bass of the music faded, replaced by the hum of industrial air conditioning and the smell of bleach. Down, I ordered. He scrambled down the stairs on 3 limbs. Whimpering with every movement, I followed, keeping the gun trained on the back of his head. At the bottom of the stairs was a heavy steel door. Open it, I said. Nico reached for the handle. Suddenly, the door swung open from the inside. A man in a tactical vest stepped out, holding a submachine gun. He saw Nico on the ground. He saw me. He raised the weapon. Threat engaged. I didn't think. Instinct took over. I dropped to one knee to reduce my silhouette. I fired twice. Double tap. 2 rounds to the chest. The man in the vest jerked back, his finger tightening on the trigger, spraying bullets into the ceiling before he collapsed backward into the room. I grabbed Nico and shoved him through the doorway, using him as a potential human shield. Don't shoot. It's me, Nico screamed. The room was a large, sterile basement. It looked like a hospital ward from hell. White tiles, bright fluorescent lights, and rows of cages. Actual cages, like dog kennels, but larger. There were 3 other men in the room. They were scrambling, trying to grab weapons, trying to understand what was happening. I didn't give them the chance. I moved with fluid precision. I shot the first man in the shoulder as he reached for a shotgun. He spun around, crashing into a metal tray of surgical instruments. The second man dove behind a desk. I fired at the leg of the desk, splintering the wood, keeping him pinned. The third man, a giant with a shaved head, charged me. He didn't have a gun, he had a machete. He was too close to shoot without risking a jam or a struggle. I sidestepped his swing, the blade rushing past my face so close I felt the air displace. I caught his wrist with my left hand, using his own momentum to twist his arm behind his back. I heard the snap of his elbow. He roared. I kicked the back of his knee, forcing him down, and pistol whipped him across the temple. He went limp. Silence fell over the room, broken only by the whimper of the man I had shot in the shoulder and the sobbing of Nico Vance. And then, I heard it, the sound of crying, soft, terrified weeping. I looked at the cages. There were 5 girls. They were huddled in the corners of the cells, dressed in cheap lingerie, their makeup smeared with tears. They looked at me with wide, fearful eyes. They didn't see a savior. They saw just another person with a gun. It's okay, I said. My voice softening, shifting from combat mode to mother mode. I'm not going to hurt you. I'm here to get you out. I rushed to the first cage. A redhead girl, maybe 20, was shaking uncontrollably. Olivia? I called out, scanning the other cells. Olivia, are you here? No answer. My heart began to hammer against my ribs like a trapped bird. I ran to the next cage. Then the next. Strangers. All of them strangers. Someone's daughters. Someone's sisters. But not mine. I spun around to Nico, who was trying to crawl toward the exit. I stomped on his good leg. He shrieked. Where is she? I screamed, the control finally slipping. She was in the van. I saw her. Nico pointed a shaking finger toward a heavy door at the far end of the room. The director. He took her. Who is the director? The buyer. The VIP. He wanted a private showing. He took the fresh one. The blonde. Just 10 minutes ago. Where did they go? The roof. The helipad. He has a chopper. 10 minutes. A lifetime. I shot the lock off the master control panel on the wall. The cage doors buzzed and clicked open. Run, I told the girls. Go up the stairs. Out the fire exit. Do not stop until you see police uniforms. Go. They hesitated for a second. Then bolted. A flurry of bare feet in desperation. I turned back to Nico. You're staying here for the cops. I said. Wait, you can't leave me. I'm bleeding out. Then pray they drive fast. I said cold. I ran to the door Nico had pointed to. It led to a private elevator. I hit the button. Roof access. The elevator began to ascend. My hands were shaking. I clenched them into fists. Hold it together. Michelle, you are close. The elevator opened onto the roof. The hot desert wind hit me instantly, whipping my hair across my face. The noise was deafening. The thwack 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 of rotor blades. I ran out onto the helipad. A sleek, black helicopter was already hovering a few feet off the ground, its nose dipping as it prepared to accelerate. Through the glass of the cockpit, I saw him, a man in a silver suit. The director. And beside him, slumped against the window, her eyes closed. Olivia, I screamed. The sound was torn from my throat, raw and primal. I raised my gun. I aimed at the pilot. But I couldn't shoot. The angle was wrong. If I missed, I could hit the fuel tank. I could hit Olivia. I lowered the weapon, helpless. The helicopter rose higher, banking sharply to the left. The downwash knocked me to my knees. I watched as the lights of the chopper faded into the dark velvet sky of Las Vegas. Heading west toward the mountains. Toward the endless, empty desert. I knelt there on the gravel of the roof, gasping for breath. The smell of aviation fuel burned my lungs. They had her. They had taken her right out from under my fingers. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out. It was Jack. Jack. I tracked the van's previous GPS logs. But Michelle. The police scanners are going crazy. Every cop in Vegas is heading to the inferno. You need to disappear. Now. I looked at the retreating helicopter. I typed back. Jack. Track a chopper. Tail number N744X. Heading west. I stood up. I wiped the dust from my knees. The despair tried to take hold. Tried to tell me it was over. But I pushed it down. I buried it under layers of cold, hard rage. They thought they had escaped. They thought taking her to the sky would save them. But they didn't know who I was. I was a mother. And for her, I would tear the sky down. I turned and ran back to the elevator. I needed a car. I needed weapons. And I needed to go to the mountains. The hunt wasn't over. It had just moved to a bigger hunting ground. The roof of the inferno was a trap. Below me, the sirens wailed, a discordant symphony of law and order arriving too late to save anyone. But just in time to catch me. Blue and red lights washed over the gravel roof, painting the HVAC units in epileptic flashes. I crouched behind a ventilation shaft, my chest heaving. The helicopter was a fading speck of red light against the black mountains to the west. My daughter was in that speck, and I was stuck on a 4-story building surrounded by half the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. Assess, adapt, overcome. I couldn't go back down the elevator. The SWAT teams would be clearing the building floor by floor. The stairwells would be kill zones. I ran to the edge of the roof, peering over the parapet. The alley below was choked with squad cars. Officers were setting up a perimeter. But to my right, about 12 feet away across a yawning gap of darkness, was the flat roof of a derelict warehouse. It was lower, maybe a 10-foot drop. 12 feet across, 10 feet down. In my prime, that was a warm-up. Now, with a bruised rib from the bouncer's punch and knees that had seen too many hard landings. It was a gamble. I didn't hesitate. Hesitation is where you die. I backed up, taking a running start. My boots crunched on the gravel. I hit the edge of the roof and launched myself into the void. For a second, I was weightless. The wind roared in my ears. The lights of the strip spun dizzyingly in my peripheral vision. Then, gravity took over. I hit the warehouse roof hard. I didn't stick the landing, I rolled, instinctively tucking my chin to protect my neck. The impact jarred my teeth and sent a fresh spike of agony up my spine. My shoulder scraped against the rough tar paper, shredding my jacket. I lay there for 3 seconds, listening. Did anyone see me? No shouts, no spotlights turning my way. Just the chaos continuing at the inferno. I forced myself up. I was limping, but I was moving. I crossed the warehouse roof and found a rusted fire escape. I descended into a darkened alley, 2 blocks away from the club. I hit the pavement and merged into the shadows. I was no longer Michelle Carter, the tourist. I was a fugitive. I pulled the collar of my torn jacket up. I checked my reflection in a dirty shop window. My hair was wild, my face smeared with grime and sweat. I looked like one of the thousands of homeless souls that drifted through the cracks of this city. Good. Invisibility is a weapon. I needed wheels. The Ducati was back at the club. Burned. My rental car was at the hotel. Watched. I walked quickly, keeping my head down, moving away from the sirens. I reached a 24-hour gas station a few blocks down. A beat-up 2010 Honda Civic was at the pump. The driver, a skinny kid with headphones on, went inside to pay. He left the engine running. Amateur. I didn't feel guilty. I felt desperate. I slipped into the driver's seat. The smell of stale fast food and weed filled the car. I threw it into gear and peeled out onto the main road just as the kid ran out, shouting something I couldn't hear. "Sorry," I whispered. "I'll bring it back." I drove north, away from the strip, away from the cameras. I needed to disappear. And I needed gear. The 9mm pistol tucked in my waistband had 7 rounds left. That wasn't enough to take down a fortress. My burner phone buzzed. "Jack. Michelle. You're all over the police scanners. They have a description. White female. Late 40s. Blonde. Armed and dangerous. Suspect in a mass shooting at the Inferno. Shoot to kill orders are effectively in place if you resist." Me. I'm clear of the zone. Did you track the bird? Jack. Yes. N744X. It's registered to a shell company called Obsidian Holdings. It landed 15 minutes ago at a private compound in Red Rock Canyon. Michelle. The owner of the company is Julian Vane. Julian Vane. The name hit me like a physical blow. I knew that name. Everyone in the intelligence community knew that name. Julian Vane was an arms dealer turned information broker. A man who sold secrets, weapons, and people to the highest bidder. He was untouchable. He had senators in his pocket and judges on his payroll. He was the director. Me. Send me the coordinates. And Jack. I need hardware. Who do we have in Vegas? Jack. Nobody active. The old safe houses are burned. Me. Think. Jack. Who owes us? Who's off the books? A long pause. Then. Jack. Moses. Remember him? Operation Sandstorm. 2014. He runs a salvage yard in North Las Vegas now. Moses. The demolitions expert who lost an eye in Fallujah. I had dragged him out of a burning Humvee when everyone else left him for dead. He owed me a life. Send the address, I said, spinning the steering wheel and drifting the Honda onto the freeway on-ramp. 20 minutes later, I pulled up to a chain-link gate topped with razor wire. The sign read, Moses Salvage and Scrap, keep out. A large Rottweiler threw itself against the fence, barking ferociously. I got out of the car, keeping my hands visible. A floodlight snapped on, blinding me. One more step and the dog gets a chew toy. A gravelly voice boomed from a loudspeaker. Hello, Moses, I called out. It's Banshee. Silence. The dog stopped barking, sensing the change in tension. The gate buzzed and slid open slowly. I drove in. The yard was a graveyard of rusted metal, stacks of crushed cars, old shipping containers, and mountains of tires. I parked in front of a corrugated metal shack. The door opened. Moses stepped out. He was huge, a mountain of a man with a gray beard and an eye patch over his left eye. He held a pump-action shotgun loosely in one hand. He looked at me, ragged, bleeding, eyes burning with a cold fire. He lowered the shotgun. Banshee, he grumbled. You look like hell warmed over. I've had a bad night, I said, stepping out of the car. I need a favor. A favor? You're wanted for shooting up a club on Fremont. It's on the news. He spat on the ground. You brought heat to my door. Michelle. They took my daughter. Moses. The annoyance on his face vanished instantly. It was replaced by a solemn, heavy stillness. Soldiers understand loss. They understand the sacred duty of protecting your own. Who took her? Julian Vane. Moses let out a low whistle. You're hunting the devil himself. I don't care if he's the devil. I'm going to kill him. But I need tools. He stared at me for a long moment. Then nodded. Come inside. The shack was a facade. Inside, he moved a vending machine to reveal a staircase leading down. We descended into his bunker. It was a prepper's paradise. Walls lined with rifles, pistols, explosives, and surveillance gear. The air smelled of gun oil and cold steel. Take what you need, Moses said, leaning against a workbench. On the house. Consider the debt paid. I didn't waste time on pleasantries. I went to work. I needed speed, silence, and lethality. I bypassed the heavy machine guns. I wasn't fighting an army, I was infiltrating a fortress. I picked up a Sig Sauer MCX Rattler. Compact, suppressed, chambered in .300 blackout. Perfect for close quarters combat and quiet takedowns. I grabbed 4 spare magazines. Good choice, Moses muttered. Next, a sidearm. I kept the Smith & Wesson but added a Glock 19 with a threaded barrel and a suppressor. Reliability is key. Body armor? Moses asked, tossing me a vest. Ceramic plates. Level 4, I said, strapping it on over my torn shirt. It was heavy, comforting. I found a pouch of flashbang grenades. I took 3 chaos generators. Then, I saw it. A tomahawk. Matte black steel. Sharpened to a razor edge. I pulled it from the rack. It felt balanced. Primal. Silent. I slid it into a loop on my belt. You going to war, Michelle? Moses asked softly. I looked at him while checking the action on the rifle. Click-clack. No, Moses. War has rules. This isn't war. I grabbed a night vision monocular and a first aid trauma kit. Do you have a vehicle that isn't stolen? I asked. Round back. Old Ford Bronco. Ugly as sin, but the engine is a beast. And it's off the grid. I gathered the gear. I felt the weight of it, 30 pounds of death strapped to my body. It was a familiar weight. It made me feel whole again. The mother was gone. The operator was back. Michelle, Moses said as I headed for the stairs. I turned. Vane's compound. I've heard rumors. It's not just guards. He hires ex-Spetsnaz. Professionals. They won't panic like the bouncers at the club. Good, I said, my eyes cold. I prefer professionals. They're more predictable. I drove the Bronco out of the salvage yard, leaving the lights of Las Vegas behind me. The city was aglow in the rearview mirror, a testament to man's hubris. But ahead of me lay the desert. Dark, silent, and unforgiving. I looked at the GPS coordinates Jack had sent. Red Rock Canyon, the Vane Estate. I checked the time. 22:45. The auction was rumored to start at midnight. I had 1 hour and 15 minutes to breach a fortress, kill everyone who stood in my way, and find my daughter. I pressed the gas pedal to the floor. The Bronco roared, tearing up the asphalt. Inside the car, the silence was heavy. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the only thing I had left of Olivia's, her cracked phone. I pressed the power button. The screen flickered to life. The wallpaper was a selfie of us, laughing at a beach in Florida 2 years ago. Her smile, that innocent, beautiful smile. A tear escaped, tracking through the dirt on my cheek. I brushed it away angrily. There would be time to cry later. If I lived. Right now, there was only the mission. Hold on, baby girl, I whispered to the empty desert. Mommy's coming. The desert at night is a deceiver. It looks empty, but it is full of life. Scorpions scuttle under rocks. Coyotes howl at the moon. And tonight, something far more dangerous than a coyote was moving through the sagebrush of Red Rock Canyon. I parked the Bronco 3 miles away, hidden in a dry riverbed, an arroyo, covered with a camouflage net Moses had thrown in. I couldn't risk the engine noise echoing off the canyon walls. I walked the rest of the way, the gravel crunching softly under my boots. The Vane Estate rose out of the red rocks like a fortress from a Bond villain's fever dream. It was a sprawling complex of glass, steel, and concrete, built directly into the side of the mountain. It was beautiful, it was imposing, and it was impenetrable. I lay on a ridge overlooking the compound, peering through the night vision monocular. Green phosphor whirled. The heat signatures glowed white against the cool desert background. Perimeter assessment. 12-foot concrete walls topped with electrified razor wire. Cameras every 50 feet. 4 guard towers, 1 at each corner. Snipers in 2 of them. Patrols. 2-man teams with dogs. Belgian Malinois. Fast, vicious, and loyal. My heart was beating a slow, steady rhythm. Thump, thump, thump. This was the puzzle. This was the game. How do you get a ghost into a machine? I checked my gear. The Sig Sauer MCX Rattler was slung across my chest. The suppressor cold against my skin. The tomahawk on my belt. The Glock on my thigh. I wasn't here to knock. I moved down the ridge, sliding through the shadows like spilled ink. The wind was blowing from the west, perfect. It would carry my scent away from the dogs. I reached the blind spot I had identified from the ridge, a drainage culvert on the north side, where the estate's wastewater flowed out. It was covered by a heavy steel grate. I knelt in the mud. The smell was foul, a mix of sewage and chemicals. I pulled out a small canister of liquid nitrogen from my pack, another gift from Moses. I sprayed the padlock on the grate. The metal hissed, turning white with frost. I waited 3 seconds. Then, I struck it with the back of my tomahawk. Crack! The frozen steel shattered like glass. I slipped inside the pipe. It was tight, claustrophobic. I crawled on my elbows and knees. The slimy water soaking through my tactical pants. Rats scurried away from the red light of my headlamp. Keep moving. Olivia is waiting. The pipe opened up into a maintenance sub-basement. I pushed the grate up and climbed out. Dripping wet and smelling of death. I was inside the walls. But I wasn't inside the house yet. I was in the generator room. The hum of massive diesel engines filled the air. A technician in blue coveralls was checking a gauge. His back to me. He was wearing headphones, bobbing his head to music. Careless. I moved up behind him. I didn't want to kill the help if I didn't have to. I tapped him on the shoulder. He spun around, eyes going wide. Before he could scream, I drove a fist into his solar plexus, folding him in half. As he gasped, I applied a sleeper hold. 5 seconds later, he was unconscious. I dragged him behind the generator and zip-tied his hands and feet. I moved to the door. I cracked it open. A long, pristine hallway lined with modern art. Marble floors. I checked the time. 23:15. 45 minutes until the auction. I needed to find the security center. I needed to blind them. I moved down the hall, counting my steps. 1, 2, check corner. Clear. I heard voices ahead. 2 guards. Tactical gear. Carrying MP5 submachine guns. They were laughing about a poker game. Did you see the new batch? One asked. Yeah, the blonde one. Vane says she's the centerpiece. Feisty. Bid one of the handlers. Olivia. My blood boiled. Hot and fast. She was fighting. That's my girl. But hearing them talk about her like cattle. It took every ounce of my discipline not to run out there and spray them with bullets. Stealth first. Violence later. I waited for them to pass. Then I slipped into the shadow of a large potted plant. I followed them. They led me right where I wanted to go. Server room, security. The door was guarded by one man. He looked bored. I unslung the rattler. I raised the weapon, lining up the red dot sight. Peefed. The suppressed shot was barely a whisper. The bullet struck him in the neck, just above the body armor. He dropped without a sound. I caught him before he hit the floor, dragging him into the alcove. I took his keycard. I swiped the card. The server room door opened. Inside, banks of computers hummed. No people, just machines. I went to the main console. Moses had given me a USB drive with a nasty little worm on it. Plug it in, and it'll loop the camera feeds. He had said, "They'll see an empty hallway while you're walking right past them." I plugged it in. The screen flickered green, then stabilized. Camera loop active. Now, I was invisible. I left the server room. Now I could move faster. I ascended the stairs. First floor. Second floor. The music drifted down from above. Classical music. Mozart. Requiem. Fitting. I reached the double doors of the grand ballroom. 2 guards stood there, looking like statues. I couldn't shoot them both without one raising an alarm on the radio. I needed a distraction. I pulled a flashbang from my belt. I didn't pull the pin yet. I looked around. A service elevator. I pried the panel open and cut the wires for the elevator lights. Then I hit the call button. The elevator dinged. The doors opened to darkness. The guards looked at each other. "Check it out," one said. Guard 1 walked over, peering into the dark shaft. "Hey, the light's out." Guard 2 moved closer. "What?" I stepped out from behind the pillar. 20 feet away. I didn't use the gun. I threw the tomahawk. It spun through the air. A blur of black steel. It struck Guard 2 in the center of his chest, burying itself deep in the Kevlar and bone. He flew backward, pinned to the wall. Guard 1 spun around, raising his rifle. I was already moving. I sprinted, closing the distance. He fired. Bang! The shot went wild, shattering a vase next to my head. I slid on the marble floor, baseball style, kicking his legs out from under him. He hit the ground hard. I scrambled on top of him, drawing my knife. "Quiet," I hissed. He reached for his radio. I drove the knife into his shoulder, pinning his arm to the floor. He screamed, but I clamped a hand over his mouth. "Where is the auction?" I whispered into his face. "Inside," he gasped, tears streaming down his face. "Please, don't kill me." "How many guards inside?" 10, maybe 12, plus Vane's personal detail. Ex-Spetsnaz. 12 plus elite guards. And Julian Vane. And a room full of powerful, wealthy buyers. "Thank you," I said. I knocked him out with the pommel of the knife. I stood up. I retrieved my tomahawk, wiping the blood on the guard's uniform. I was at the doors. Beyond this wood and gold leaf lay the heart of the darkness. I took a deep breath. I checked my mag. Full. I checked the flashbangs. 3. I wasn't sneaking anymore. The gunshot had echoed. They knew someone was here. But they didn't know what was here. They were expecting a police raid. They were expecting a team. They weren't expecting a mother. I kicked the double doors open. They flew back with a crash. The room froze. It was a scene of grotesque luxury. A massive chandelier. Men in tuxedos holding champagne flutes. Women in evening gowns. And in the center of the room, on a raised stage, a rotating platform. On the platform was a golden cage. And inside the cage was Olivia. She looked up. Her eyes were groggy. But she saw me. She saw the battered woman in the tactical vest, covered in mud and blood, holding an assault rifle. "Mom?" she mouthed. Julian Vane stood by the cage, a microphone in his hand. He looked at me, annoyed, as if I were a waiter who had dropped a tray. "Who invited the entertainment?" he drawled. I raised the rattler. "The auction is over," I said. And then, I pulled the pin on the first flashbang and rolled it into the center of the room. Flash. Bang. The grenade detonated with a concussive force that shook the crystal chandelier above. A blinding white light seared the retinas of everyone in the room, followed instantly by a thunderclap that ruptured eardrums and shattered the windows. For a normal person, a flashbang is the end of the fight. It overloads the sensory input, turning the world into a spinning, ringing void of nausea. But I wasn't a normal person. I had closed my eyes and covered my ears a split second before the pin dropped. I opened my eyes. The ballroom was a tableau of chaos. Men in tuxedos were staggering, clutching their heads. Women were screaming, though the sound was muffled by the ringing in my own ears. The guards, the professionals, were disoriented, swinging their weapons blindly. I moved. I didn't run, I flowed. I stepped over a writhing billionaire on the floor and raised the Sig Sauer MCX. Target 1. The guard closest to the cage. He was rubbing his eyes with one hand, his MP5 dangling in the other. Peefed 2 rounds to the chest. He dropped backward, crashing into the golden bars of the cage. Target 2. A guard by the heavy curtains. He was blinking rapidly, trying to clear his vision. He raised his rifle. Too slow. Peefed. 1 round to the head. He crumpled. The silence of the room, a vacuum created by the explosion, shattered as the guests began to panic. The herd instinct took over. They stampeded toward the exits, trampling over the fallen, clawing at each other. It was a sea of black ties and expensive silk, now stained with fear. I used the crowd. I stayed low, weaving through the mass of bodies, keeping the cage in my sight. Julian Vane was gone. The coward had vanished the moment the flashbang went off, likely slipping through a hidden panel behind the stage. But his dogs remained. Contact front. A voice roared in Russian. 3 men emerged from the kitchen doors. These weren't the regular security. These were the Spetsnaz heavy hitters Moses had warned me about. They wore full tactical gear, gas masks, and carried AK-12s. They didn't care about the civilians. They opened fire. Bullets tore through the crowd, cutting down guests who were in the way. A woman in a red dress fell right in front of me. Silenced forever. I dove behind a grand piano, sliding across the polished floor as wood splinters exploded around me. The piano groaned under the hail of gunfire. Suppressing fire. They were pinning me down. I checked my angles. I couldn't pop up, they would shred me. I looked at the stage. Olivia was pressed against the floor of the cage, her hands over her head, sobbing. The bullets were sparking off the gold bars. "Liv," I screamed, my voice cracking. "Stay down. Do not move." I grabbed a fragmentation grenade from my belt. This wasn't a flashbang. This was lethal. I pulled the pin, cooked it for 2 seconds, and lobbed it over the piano toward the kitchen doors. 1, 2, boom. The explosion blew the kitchen doors off their hinges. Shrapnel and debris flew everywhere. The firing stopped. I rolled out from behind the piano. Rifle raised. 2 of the Russians were down, their armor shredded. The third was staggering, clutching his side. I put him down with a single shot. I sprinted for the stage. My boots slipped on blood and champagne. I vaulted onto the platform. The cage was locked with a heavy electronic keypad. "Mom!" Olivia screamed, reaching through the bars. Her face was pale, streaked with tears and mascara. "Mom, look out!" I spun around. A shadow loomed over me. It was the lead bodyguard, a giant of a man, at least 6'6", with a shaved head and a scar running down his face. He hadn't been near the grenade. He had been waiting. He slapped the rifle out of my hands. It skittered across the stage, falling into the crowd below. I reached for my Glock, but he was too fast. He grabbed my throat with a hand the size of a shovel and lifted me off the ground. My feet kicked helplessly in the air. He slammed me against the bars of the cage. My head cracked against the metal. Stars exploded in my vision. "You die now, little bird," he grumbled, his breath smelling of vodka and onions. He squeezed. My windpipe began to crush. Black spots danced at the edge of my vision. I clawed at his face. But it was like trying to scratch granite. I looked at Olivia. She was screaming, hammering on the bars, trying to reach me. Not like this. I did not come this far to die in front of her. I stopped struggling. I went limp. The giant grinned, thinking he had won. He relaxed his grip just a fraction to adjust for the kill. That was his mistake. I drove my thumbs deep into his eyes. He roared in pain, dropping me. I hit the floor and rolled. I didn't go for the gun. I went for the tomahawk on my belt. I drew it in one fluid motion. He was stumbling back, hands covering his face, blindingly angry. "Bitch," he screamed. I swung the tomahawk. I didn't aim for the head. I aimed for the knee. The blade bit deep into the joint. Bone crunched. He collapsed to one leg, howling. Now he was my height. I spun the axe in my hand, reversing the grip. "For my daughter," I whispered. I drove the spike of the tomahawk into his temple. He fell silent. He fell heavy. I stood over him, breathing hard, my chest heaving. The room was spinning. My throat felt like it was filled with broken glass. I turned to the cage. "Move back. Live," I rasped. I drew my Glock 19. I aimed at the electronic lock. Bang, bang, bang. Sparks flew. The mechanism smoked and hissed. I kicked the door. It didn't budge. I kicked it again, putting all my rage into the blow. The door groaned and swung open. Olivia flew at me. She tackled me in a hug so tight it almost knocked me over. "Mom. Oh my God. Mom." I held her. For 1 second. Amidst the carnage of dead bodies and ruined luxury. I just held her. I smelled her shampoo, lavender, under the smell of cordite. She was real. She was alive. "I've got you," I whispered into her hair. "I've got you." But the moment couldn't last. The alarms were blaring now, a high-pitched wail that signaled a total lockdown. "We have to go," I said, pulling back. "Can you run?" I think so." I lost my shoes. "Take his," I said, pointing to a dead waiter nearby. "Do it, now." She didn't argue. She scrambled to the body, pulled off the shoes, and jammed her feet into them. They were too big, but they would protect her from the glass. I retrieved my rifle. I checked the magazine. Half empty. I swapped it for a fresh one. "Where is Vane?" I asked, scanning the room. "He went through the wall," Olivia said, pointing behind the stage. "There's a panic room or a tunnel." "We're not following him," I said. "That's a trap. We need an exit." I looked around the ballroom. The main doors were blocked by a pile of bodies and debris. The kitchen was a burning wreck. The windows, floor-to-ceiling glass looking out over the canyon. "Do you trust me?" I asked Olivia. "Always," she said, her voice trembling but firm. I grabbed a heavy iron chair from the orchestra pit. I hurled it at the window. The glass shattered, raining down onto the terrace outside. The night air rushed in, cool and clean. "Let's go." We ran to the terrace. We were outside, but we weren't safe. Searchlights from the guard towers swept across the patio. Pop, pop, pop. Bullets began to chew up the stone railing around us. "Get down." I shoved Olivia behind a stone planter. I peeked over the edge. We were on the second floor. Below us was a pool area. Beyond that, the desert. But between us and the desert were at least 10 guards. Moving into position, they had us pinned. "Mom," Olivia whispered, tugging on my vest. Look, she pointed to the far side of the terrace. A trellis, covered in thick ivy, leading down to the ground level. It's too exposed, I said. The snipers will pick us off. No, she said. Look at the lights. They're on a loop. See? Left to right. There's a 4-second gap. I watched. She was right. The searchlights were automated. Left sweep. Right sweep. 4 seconds of darkness in the middle. My daughter. The graphic design student who noticed patterns. Smart girl. I grinned. Okay. On my count. We go down the trellis. I go first. If I fall, you keep going. You run for the darkness. You do not stop for me. Understand? No, she said stubbornly. We go together. Live together. I didn't have time to argue. Fine. Together. Wait for the dark. The light swept past. Go. We sprinted for the trellis. I grabbed the vines. They were thick, reinforced with wire mesh underneath. Good. We scrambled down. My gloves protected my hands. But Olivia's palms were getting shredded. She didn't complain. We hit the ground. The light swept back. We froze, pressing ourselves into the shadows of the building. The beam passed inches from our faces. We were on the pool deck. The water in the infinity pool glowed eerie blue. The garage, I whispered. If Vane has a collection, he has cars. We moved low, skirting the edge of the pool. Suddenly, a door opened to our left. A guard stepped out for a smoke break, oblivious to the war upstairs. He saw us. He reached for his radio. Hey! I raised the rifle. Peefed. He dropped, but as he fell, his finger keyed the mic. The sound of his body hitting the floor broadcasted to every guard on the network. Sector 4, pool deck, compromised. A voice crackled on his radio. Run, I yelled. Stealth was over. We sprinted across the deck toward the garage structure. Bullets began to impact the water, sending geysers of blue liquid into the air. A round grazed my thigh, burning like a hot iron. I stumbled but kept running. We reached the garage side door. Locked. I didn't bother picking it. I shot the hinges off. We burst inside. It wasn't just a garage. It was a showroom. Ferraris, Lamborghinis, vintage muscles. Pick one, I shouted. Something fast. That one. Olivia pointed to a silver Aston Martin DB11. Keys? Usually in the ignition in these places. They want them ready to go. She jumped in the passenger side. I vaulted into the driver's seat. The key fob was in the center console. I hit the start button. The V12 engine roared to life. A beautiful, angry sound. The garage door was ahead. Closed. Thick metal. Mom? Olivia gripped the dashboard. Put your seatbelt on, I said, shifting into gear. Mom, the door is closed. Not for long. I slammed the accelerator. The tires squealed, smoke filling the garage. The car launched forward like a missile. 0 to 60 in 3.9 seconds. We hit 50 miles per hour before we reached the door. Brace for impact. We smashed through the metal door. The impact was violent. The windshield spider webbed. Metal shrieked. But the car held. We burst out into the cool night air. Debris flying behind us. We were out. But the road ahead was narrow, winding, and blocked by 2 SUVs heading our way. And in the distance, I saw headlights. A convoy. Vane's reinforcements. Hang on. Liv, I said, gripping the wheel with white-knuckle force. This is going to get bumpy. I drifted the Aston Martin around the first corner. The rear tires kicking up gravel. Speeding into the darkness of Red Rock Canyon. The hunt wasn't over. The chase had just begun. The Aston Martin DB11 screamed. It wasn't just an engine noise, it was a mechanical howl of agony and power. The V12 engine was pushing 700 horsepower through the rear tires, tearing up the asphalt of the Red Rock Canyon scenic loop. The windshield was shattered from our exit through the garage door. The night wind roared into the cabin like a physical blow, whipping my hair into a frenzy and making it almost impossible to hear. But I didn't need to hear. I needed to feel. I felt the vibration of the steering wheel, the shift of the car's weight, and the terrifying proximity of death behind us. "Get down," I yelled over the wind. Olivia was curled into a ball in the passenger seat, her hands over her head. She was shaking, but she wasn't screaming anymore. She was in shock. I glanced at the rearview mirror. It was cracked, but I could see them. 2 black Cadillac Escalades, armored, heavy. They looked like battering rams on wheels. And they were gaining. The scenic loop is a 13-mile nightmare of twists and turns. During the day, it's a beautiful drive for tourists. At night, at 140 miles per hour, it's a suicide run. One mistake, one patch of loose gravel, and we would be airborne, tumbling 500 feet down into the jagged rocks below. Bam! The rear of the Aston Martin shuddered. The lead SUV had bumped us. At this speed, a love tap like that could send us spinning into oblivion. They weren't trying to capture us anymore. They were trying to kill us. Hold on. I grit my teeth, knuckles white on the leather wheel. I downshifted. The engine roared in protest. I yanked the wheel hard to the left, drifting around a sharp bend. The back tires smoked, losing traction for a heart-stopping second before biting into the pavement again. The SUV behind us was heavy. It couldn't corner like a British supercar. It swerved wide, tires screeching, missing our bumper by inches. "Mom, they're shooting!" Olivia shrieked. I saw the muzzle flashes in the side mirror. The passenger in the lead SUV was leaning out the window with a submachine gun. Bullets sparked off the road around us. One pinged off the rear fender, sounding like a hammer striking an anvil. I couldn't shoot back. Driving this car required every ounce of my focus. I needed a weapon that wasn't a gun. I needed the road. "Olivia," I shouted, keeping my eyes locked on the darkness ahead. "The map. How far to the Calico hairpin? The big turn." She fumbled with the dashboard screen, her fingers trembling. 1 mile, maybe less. It's coming up fast." "Good," I whispered. "Get ready." "Ready for what?" "Physics." I floored the gas pedal. We surged forward, widening the gap slightly. The SUVs sped up to match me. They took the bait. They thought I was panicking, trying to outrun them on the straightaway. They didn't know the road. I did. I had memorized the topography of this canyon before we even landed in Vegas. Preparation is everything. The sign flashed past in a blur of reflective yellow. "Danger, sharp curve ahead." "Here we go." I didn't brake. Not yet. I waited until the very last second. Until the cliff face seemed to be rushing at us like a wall. Then, I slammed on the brakes and ripped the handbrake. The Aston Martin went sideways. It was a perfect drift. The car slid across the asphalt, the nose pointing toward the apex of the turn, the rear hanging precariously over the edge of the cliff. The smell of burning rubber filled the cabin, choking and acrid. We cleared the turn. The lead SUV did not. The driver slammed on his brakes. But 3 tons of armored steel doesn't stop on a dime. Momentum is a cruel mistress. The Escalade locked its wheels. It skid straight past the turn. It smashed through the flimsy guardrail like it was made of balsa wood. I saw the headlights beam out into the empty air for a split second. Then, the nose dipped. There was no explosion, just the sickening sound of metal crunching against rock, echoing up from the canyon floor. Then silence. One down. But the second SUV was driven by a pro. He had anticipated the turn. He braked early, taking the inside line. He came out of the curve slower than me. But he was still on the road. And he was angry. He accelerated, his high beams blinding me in the mirror. He wasn't trying to ram me now. He was trying to push me off. The road narrowed, a chute of rock with no guardrails. He pulled up alongside me. The massive SUV towered over our low-slung sports car. He swerved right, slamming into my door. Crunch. Metal screamed. The Aston Martin shuddered violently. Skidding toward the edge, my left wheels dipped into the gravel. "Mom!" Olivia screamed, grabbing my arm. I fought the wheel, wrestling the car back onto the tarmac. "Let go, Liv," I yelled. "I got it." He hit us again, harder. My side window shattered, showering me with glass cubes. I looked up. The driver of the SUV was looking down at me. He was wearing a tactical headset and sunglasses at night. He smiled, a cold, professional smile. He was going to crush us. I couldn't outrun him here. The road was too tight. I couldn't outmuscle him. I had one option left. The Chicago typewriter maneuver. I grabbed my Glock 19 from between the seats. "Steer," I yelled at Olivia. "What?" "Grab the wheel. Keep us straight. Do it." Olivia lunged across the console, grabbing the bottom of the steering wheel with both hands. Her face was a mask of terror. But her grip was iron. I let go of the wheel. We were doing 90 miles per hour, side by side with a monster truck. I leaned out of my shattered window. The wind tore at my clothes. I was 2 feet away from the SUV's front tire. I raised the Glock. The driver saw the gun. His smile vanished. He tried to brake. Too late. Bang, bang, bang. 3 shots. Point-blank range. The heavy-duty run-flat tire exploded. It didn't just deflate, at this speed. The sidewall disintegrated. The rim dug into the asphalt. Sparks flew up in a shower of gold. The SUV jerked violently to the left. Away from me, toward the canyon wall. The driver lost control. The massive vehicle spun, flipped onto its side, and slid. It slammed into the rock face with the force of a freight train. The fuel tank ruptured. Boom! A fireball erupted behind us, painting the canyon walls in orange and red. I pulled myself back into the car and grabbed the wheel. "I got it. I got it." Olivia collapsed back into her seat, sobbing dry, heaving breaths. I slowed down. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from the adrenaline crash. I looked in the mirror. Just the burning wreckage behind us. No more headlights. "We're clear," I whispered. "We're clear." I drove in silence for 10 minutes, letting the car limp along. The alignment was destroyed, the engine was overheating, and the side of the car looked like a crushed soda can. But we were alive. We exited the canyon and turned onto a dirt road north of the city. The lights of Vegas were a distant glow on the horizon, a fake paradise that had almost swallowed us whole. I pulled up to the gate of Moses's salvage yard. The old sign creaked in the wind. The gate rolled open. Moses was waiting. He stood there with a shotgun resting on his shoulder, his one good eye scanning the darkness. When he saw the Aston Martin, or what was left of it, he lowered the gun and just stared. I killed the engine. It died with a sputtering cough. I opened the door. It screeched against the bent frame. I stepped out, my legs feeling like jelly. Olivia stumbled out the other side, still wearing the oversized waiter's shoes. Moses walked over, inspecting the car. He kicked a piece of the bumper that was dragging on the ground. "You know," he said, his voice gravelly and calm, "when you said you needed wheels, I didn't think you meant you were going to use them as a battering ram." I leaned against the hood, wiping blood from a cut on my forehead. "It was a rental, Moses, technically." He chuckled, a dry, rusty sound. "You look like hell. Banshee." "I feel like it." He looked at Olivia. She was standing by the fender, shivering in the desert chill. Moses took off his heavy flannel jacket and walked over to her. He draped it around her shoulders gently. "Come on, kid," he said softly. "I've got hot cocoa and a first aid kit inside. Let's get you cleaned up." We went into the bunker. It was underground, cool, and smelled of gun oil and old books. It was the safest place on earth. Moses patched me up, rubbing alcohol, stitches, bandages. I didn't flinch. Pain was just a signal. Olivia sat on a cot in the corner, holding a mug of cocoa with both hands. She was staring at nothing. "The police are going crazy," Moses said, watching a bank of monitors. "They found the bodies at the estate. They found the wreck in the canyon. They're calling it a cartel war." "Let them," I said, pulling on a fresh black t-shirt Moses gave me. "Julian Vane got away." Moses paused. "I tracked the transponder on his chopper like you asked. It didn't go to the airport. It crossed the border." "Where?" "Baja. A private airstrip near Ensenada. He has a compound there. Casa del Diablo. The Devil's House." I stood up. My body screamed in protest. But my mind was clear. Cold. Focused. "He thinks he's safe," I said. "He thinks he left the problem in Vegas." "Michelle," Moses warned, "you're done. You got the girl. Go home. Disappear." I looked at Olivia. She looked up at me. Her eyes weren't fearful anymore. They were hard. She had seen things tonight that no 19-year-old should see. She had steered a car at 140 miles per hour while I shot a man. She wasn't just a victim anymore. She was a survivor. "I can't go home, Moses," I said. "Not while he's alive. He knows who I am. He knows who she is. He'll come for us." "So what's the plan?" Moses asked, though I knew he already knew the answer. "I need a plane," I said, "and I need something heavier than a pistol." Olivia stood up. She walked over to us. The blanket fell off her shoulders. "I'm going with you," she said. "No," I said instantly. "Absolutely not. You are staying here with Moses." "I can't stay here," she said, her voice trembling but resolute. "I close my eyes and I see the cage. Mom, I see the men. I can't just sit and wait. And, you need me." "I don't need you. I need you safe." "You needed me in the car," she countered. "You needed me to read the map. You needed me to hold the wheel. You're hurt. You're limping. You can't do this alone." I looked at Moses. He shrugged. "Kid's got a point. Banshee. You're running on fumes." I looked back at my daughter. The little girl who used to cry when she scraped her knee was gone. In her place was a young woman forged in fire. I hated it, and I was incredibly proud of it. "If you come," I said, my voice low, "you do exactly what I say. No hesitation. No questions. We are going into a war zone." Olivia nodded. "Yes, ma'am." I turned to Moses. "Load up the truck, Moses. We're going to Mexico." The plane was a relic. It was a twin-engine Beechcraft Baron 58 that looked like it had been flying since the Carter administration. The paint was peeling, revealing the dull aluminum skin beneath, and the interior smelled of aviation fuel and stale coffee. "She runs hot on the left engine," Moses shouted over the roar of the propellers as we taxied down the dirt strip behind his salvage yard. "But she'll get you there. Stay under 500 feet until you cross the border. The radar net is spotty in the corridor I marked on the GPS. But don't get cocky." I sat in the pilot's seat, headset on, hands light on the yoke. It had been years since I had flown fixed wing. But muscle memory is a stubborn thing. My hands knew the vibration of the stall speed. My feet knew the dance of the rudder pedals. "Thanks, Moses," I said into the mic. "I owe you. Again. Just bring the kid back in one piece." Moses's voice crackled in my ear. "And Michelle? Give Vane hell." I pushed the throttles forward. The engines roared, a guttural harmony that vibrated through the frame of the small aircraft. We bounced down the uneven dirt track, gathering speed, 60 knots, 80 knots. "Rotate." I pulled back on the yoke. The ground fell away. We were airborne. I didn't climb. I banked hard to the south, keeping the belly of the plane skimming just above the power lines. We were flying, nap of the earth, low enough to blend in with the ground clutter on radar screens, high enough not to clip a cactus. Beside me, Olivia was clutching a ruggedized laptop Moses had given us. Her face was illuminated by the blue glow of the screen, her brow furrowed in concentration. She wasn't looking out the window at the dark desert rushing by. She was looking at code. "How are you holding up?" I asked, my voice calm over the intercom. She adjusted her headset. "I'm okay, I think. I'm trying to map the network infrastructure around Ensenada. If Vane is as paranoid as you say, his compound won't just have walls. It'll have a digital moat. He's an arms dealer. Liv, he sells surveillance tech to dictators. His house will be smarter than the Pentagon. That's the problem with smart houses. Mom," she said, a faint smile touching her lips. "They have to talk to the outside world. And if they talk, they can be interrupted." I looked at her, really looked at her, in the dim light of the cockpit instruments. She didn't look like the little girl I remembered dropping off at dorm rooms. She looked focused, competent. "I didn't know you knew how to do this stuff," I admitted. "I thought you were studying graphic design." "Design is just code with a pretty face." She shrugged. "And you know, I had a lot of free time when you were deployed. Computers were easier to talk to than people." A pang of guilt hit me. The years I spent hunting bad men in bad places were years I wasn't there to see her grow into this person. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "Don't," she said firmly. "We have a job to do. Focus on flying. I'll focus on the ghosts." We crossed the border 20 minutes later. There were no lights, no fences visible from this altitude. Just a shift in the darkness. The infinite grid of American highways dissolved into the rugged, empty blackness of the Baja California desert. I navigated by the stars and the GPS waypoints Moses had loaded. We flew south, hugging the coastline. To my right, the Pacific Ocean was a vast, restless void. To my left, the jagged spine of the mountains rose up to block the moon. 2 hours later, the lights of Ensenada appeared on the horizon, a cluster of amber jewels against the sea. "We're close," I said. "Prepare for landing. It's going to be rough." The airstrip wasn't really an airstrip. It was a dried-out lake bed 10 miles inland, used by smugglers and crop dusters. There were no runway lights, I had to rely on my night vision goggles. I cut the throttles. The plane descended into the gloom. The wheels touched down with a bone-jarring thud, kicking up a rooster tail of dust. I fought the rudder to keep us straight as we skidded to a halt. Silence returned to the desert as I killed the engines. The only sound was the ticking of the cooling metal. "Welcome to Mexico," I said, unbuckling my harness. We grabbed our gear, the duffel bags of weapons, the tech case, and the few supplies we had. We abandoned the plane. By sunrise, the locals would strip it for parts. Or the cartel would claim it. It didn't matter. It was a one-way ticket. Moses had arranged a vehicle. A rusted 1998 Toyota Hilux was parked under a mesquite tree 100 yards away. The keys were under the mat. It wasn't an Aston Martin. It smelled of wet dog and diesel. But it started on the first turn. We drove toward the coast, navigating dirt roads that wound through the hills. Casa del Diablo. Olivia read from the file on her laptop. Coordinates confirm. It's on a cliff overlooking the ocean. About 5 miles south of the main city. Isolated. One road in, one road out. A fatal funnel. I muttered. If we drive up the main road, they'll see us coming a mile away. We need eyes on the target. We parked the truck in a dense thicket of scrub brush. A mile from the compound, we proceeded on foot, moving up a steep ridge that overlooked the ocean. The wind was strong here, carrying the salt spray from the waves crashing against the rocks hundreds of feet below. We crested the ridge and went prone. I pulled out my thermal binoculars. There it was. The Devil's House. It was a masterpiece of modern architecture, concrete and glass, cantilevered over the cliff edge like a white scar on the landscape. It was surrounded by a 12-foot stucco wall topped with cameras and motion sensors. I scanned the perimeter. 2 guards at the gate. AK-47s. 1 patrol on the roof. Sniper rifle. Dogs in the courtyard. Dobermans. It's a fortress, I whispered. I can't breach that wall without tripping an alarm. And if the alarm goes off, Vane runs again, or he kills us. Olivia was lying next to me, typing furiously on her laptop. She had deployed a small directional antenna, pointing it at the house. "I'm picking up their Wi-Fi handshake," she murmured. "It's encrypted. AES 256. Military grade. I can't brute force it." "So we're stuck?" "No," she said, her eyes scanning the screen. "I'm looking at the RF spectrum. Radio frequencies. Look at this spike." She pointed to a jagged line on her monitor. "What is it?" "It's a drone signal, but not a security drone. It's a toy?" I adjusted my binoculars, scanning the courtyard again. There, by the pool, a man was sitting in a lounge chair, smoking a cigar. Next to him, a younger man, maybe a bodyguard or a guest, was flying a small racing drone through hoops set up in the yard. "I see it," I said, "someone playing with a quadcopter." "That's our way in," Olivia said, her voice rising with excitement. "That drone uses a consumer-grade frequency to transmit video back to the controller. It's unencrypted. If I can hijack the signal, I can piggyback a packet injection into their local network when the drone lands and connects to their Wi-Fi to upload the footage. In English, live. I can turn that toy into a virus," she said, looking at me with a fierce grin. "But I need to be closer. The signal is weak. I need to be within 200 yards. I looked at the terrain. Between us and the wall was 200 yards of open ground, covered only by sparse cactus and rocks. "It's suicide," I said, "if the sniper sees you." "He won't see me," Olivia said. Because you're going to distract him. Excuse me? You're the distraction. Mom, you're the banshee. Make some noise on the north side. Draw their eyes. I'll slip into the drainage ditch on the south side. It gets me within range. I stared at her. It was a good plan. A tactical plan. And it terrified me. If they catch you. They won't, she said. I learned from the best. I took a deep breath. She was right. We didn't have a choice. Okay, I said, checking the magazine on my Sig Sauer. I'll move to the North Ridge. I'll set off a diversion charge. When their heads turn, you move, you get the signal, you hack the system, and you kill the cameras. Then I go over the wall. And the alarms? Disable them. Can you do it? Give me 10 minutes, she said. I reached out and squeezed her hand. It felt small in my tactical glove. But her grip was strong. Stay low. Move fast. If things go wrong, you run back to the truck and you leave. Do not wait for me. I'm not leaving without you, she said. I slipped away into the darkness, moving toward the north flank. The mother in me was screaming to stop, to turn back, but the soldier knew the mission was a go. I reached my position. I set a small block of C4 on a dead tree stump about 50 yards from the main gate. I rigged a remote detonator. I checked my watch. 3 a.m., the witching hour. I looked through the scope of my rifle. I could see Olivia. She was a dark shape moving through the drainage ditch. Low and fast. She was moving well. That's my girl. She reached the waypoint. She stopped. I saw the faint glow of her laptop screen shielded by her jacket. She was in position. I waited. 1 minute. 2 minutes. Then, a double click on my earpiece. Her signal. Ready. I pressed the button on the detonator. Boom. The C4 exploded with a sharp crack, blowing the tree stump into splinters and sending a plume of smoke into the air. The reaction was instant. The spotlights on the wall swung toward the explosion. The guards at the gate shouted, running toward the north perimeter. The sniper on the roof pivoted his rifle, scanning the smoke. Go, Liv, go. I watched the south side. Nothing moved. Good. Inside the compound, the drone pilot dropped the controller in surprise. The drone hovered for a second. Then auto-landed on the patio. Perfect. A minute passed. It felt like an hour. Then, my earpiece crackled. I'm in. Olivia's voice whispered. I've got root access. Looping the camera feeds, now. Disabling motion sensors, now. You have a green light. Mom, the door is open. I didn't hesitate. I broke cover, sprinting across the open ground toward the wall. I hit the stucco surface, my boots finding purchase on the rough texture. I vaulted up, grabbing the top edge. I pulled myself over. I dropped down into the courtyard, landing in a crouch behind a marble fountain. I was inside. I checked the courtyard. The guards were still focused on the smoke outside the gate. The sniper was scanning the hills. They were blind to the wolf in their living room. I tapped my earpiece. I'm inside. Regroup at the extraction point. Good work, Liv. Mom. Olivia's voice came back. Urgent. Wait. I'm reading their internal comms. Vane isn't just selling weapons tonight. He's meeting someone. A buyer. They're in the panic room in the basement. And Mom. The buyer isn't a cartel boss. Who is it? The signal signature. It's a government frequency. U.S. military encryption. I froze. U.S. military? Buying from Julian Vane? The betrayal went deeper than I thought. This wasn't just a kidnapping. This was treason. Keep recording, I said, my voice cold as ice. I'm going to crash the party. I moved toward the main house. The Sig Sauer raised. The stealth phase was over. It was time to clean house. The interior of Casa del Diablo was a shrine to minimalism and excess. White marble floors stretched like frozen lakes, reflecting the recessed lighting. The walls were adorned with abstract art that probably cost more than the GDP of a small country. It was quiet, too quiet, the silence of a tomb before the grave robbers arrive. I moved through the hallways like a shadow. The suppressed Sig Sauer MCX raised tight against my shoulder. My boots were wet from the ocean spray, leaving faint, damp prints on the pristine marble, the only evidence that death had entered the building. "Mom," Olivia's voice whispered in my earpiece. Clear and trembling. "I've looped the internal sensors. You're invisible to the system. But there are 2 heat signatures in the main living room. Stationary. And 5 more in the basement level. That's where the encrypted signal is coming from." "Copy." I breathed. "Guide me." "Left at the end of the hall. There's a service elevator behind the kitchen pantry. It bypasses the main security checkpoint." I moved left. A guard stepped out of the kitchen, holding a bottle of sparkling water. He was young, barely 20, wearing the standard black tactical polo of Vane's private army. He saw me. His eyes widened. He dropped the bottle. Before it hit the floor, I was on him. I didn't shoot. A gunshot, even suppressed, makes a noise like a hammer hitting a plank. I holstered the rifle in one fluid motion and drew my knife. I slammed him against the wall, my hand over his mouth, the blade pressing against his carotid artery. "Sleep," I hissed. I applied pressure to the vagus nerve. His eyes rolled back, his knees buckled. I lowered him gently to the floor just as the glass bottle rolled away. Unbroken. I stepped over him and entered the service elevator. I pressed the button for the basement level. The doors slid shut. The descent was smooth, silent. "Olivia," I whispered. "Who is the buyer? Did you crack the encryption?" I think so." She stammered. "Mom, the digital signature on the comms channel. It belongs to a unit called Task Force 77. Does that mean anything to you?" My blood ran cold. The elevator seemed to shrink. The air suddenly thin. Task Force 77. That was my unit. The unit that didn't exist. The unit that was disbanded 5 years ago after the Aleppo scandal. The unit led by the only man I ever trusted with my life. "Colonel Stone," I whispered, the name tasting like ash in my mouth. "I'm decrypting the audio feed now," Olivia said, patching it through. A burst of static, and then a voice filled my earpiece. A voice I hadn't heard in years. Gravel and command. Unacceptable. "Vane, you brought a war to my doorstep. The Vegas operation was supposed to be clean. Acquire the assets, transport them, wash the money. Instead, I have CNN running headlines about a massacre at the Inferno." Then, Vane's voice. Weaker. Slimy. "It wasn't my fault, Colonel. It was the mother. She's not human. She took down my best men. She breached the Red Rock estate alone." "Because you were sloppy," Stone barked. "You didn't check the background of the target. You grabbed the daughter of Michelle Carter. You grabbed Banshee's cub. Did you think she would just file a police report?" The elevator dinged. I stood frozen. It wasn't a coincidence. It wasn't just bad luck. They knew. Or at least, Stone knew. He was using Vane to traffic girls to fund his black ops. And my daughter was just another line item on a ledger. The doors opened. I stepped out into a wide, underground bunker. One wall was entirely glass, looking into a massive shark tank. Blue light from the water illuminated the room in eerie, shifting waves. In the center of the room sat a long mahogany table. Julian Vane was pacing, a glass of scotch in his hand. He looked disheveled, his suit torn, a bandage on his forehead. Sitting at the head of the table, back straight, uniform impeccable despite the lack of insignia, was Colonel Marcus Stone. 4 bodyguards, my former brothers in arms, stood in the shadows. I stepped into the light. "Hello, Marcus," I said. The room froze. Vane dropped his glass. It shattered, the amber liquid pooling on the concrete. Colonel Stone didn't flinch. He slowly turned his head. His eyes, cold, gray, calculating, locking onto mine. He didn't look surprised. He looked disappointed. "Michelle," he said, his voice level, "I see retirement hasn't softened you. And I see a pension wasn't enough for you," I replied, keeping the Sig Sauer trained on his chest. "Trafficking, Marcus? Kids? This is how you serve your country now?" "We serve the greater good," Stone said, standing up slowly. "Funding isn't what it used to be. The politicians in Washington want to fight wars with hashtags and sanctions. We need real resources to keep this country safe. These girls, they're a necessary sacrifice. Nobody misses the runaways. Nobody looks for the lost." "I looked," I said, "and I found you." "You found a grave," Stone said. He nodded to his men. The 4 bodyguards raised their weapons. M4 carbines. I was outgunned, 4-1, plus Stone, plus Vane, but I had something they didn't. I had rage. And I had Olivia. "Liv," I whispered. "Now." Click. Suddenly, the lights in the bunker died. Total darkness, except for the blue glow of the shark tank. And my night vision goggles. I flipped them down. The world turned green. I moved. Target 1, the guard on the left. I fired twice. Peefed. He dropped before he could trigger his weapon. Target 2, the guard on the right opened fire blindly. The muzzle flashes lighting up the room like strobe lights. Bullets chipped the concrete wall behind me. I rolled under the table. I saw his legs. I fired. 1 shot to the kneecap. He screamed and fell. I finished him with a kick to the temple as I slid out the other side. "Kill her," Vane screamed, cowering behind a heavy leather chair. Colonel Stone was calm. He had pulled a sidearm, a .45 caliber 1911. He was backing toward a secure door at the rear of the room. "You're making a mistake, Banshee," Stone yelled over the gunfire. "You kill me, and the whole network goes dark. You'll never find the others." "I don't care about the others right now," I shouted back, taking cover behind a pillar. "I care about the man who authorized the kidnapping of my daughter." I popped out. Stone fired. The bullet grazed my shoulder plate, the impact spinning me around. I returned fire. My shot hit his gun hand. The .45 flew across the room. Stone gripped his wrist, his face twisting in pain but not fear. I advanced on him. The last 2 guards were hesitant. They saw their team decimated in 10 seconds. "Walk away," I ordered them. "You took an oath to defend the Constitution. Not a pimp in a uniform. Walk away." They looked at Stone. They looked at me, the legend of their unit. They lowered their weapons. They backed off, disappearing into the shadows of the stairwell. I stood over Stone. He was leaning against the shark tank, clutching his bleeding hand. Behind him, a great white shark glided silently past the glass. A predator watching a predator. "It's over, Marcus," I said. "Is it?" He laughed. A wet, hacking sound. "You think this ends with me?" I'm just a middleman, Michelle. Vane is the supplier. I'm the logistics. But the buyers? The real buyers? They are everywhere. Senators, judges, royals. Give me the list, I demanded, pressing the muzzle of my rifle to his forehead. If I give you the list, I'm dead anyway. If you don't give me the list, you die right here, and nobody will ever know why. You'll just be another corrupt officer who died in a drug deal gone wrong. No honors, no flag on your coffin. Just shame. Stone stared at me. He knew I was right. Legacy was the only thing he had left. He reached into his jacket pocket with his good hand. I tensed. Finger on the trigger. He pulled out a small, encrypted data drive. The ledger, he said, tossing it onto the floor. Everyone, every transaction, every girl. I kept the gun on him, crouching to pick up the drive. Thank you, I said. Then, a sound, a mechanical whirring. I looked past Stone. Julian Vane. He was standing by a control panel on the far wall. His face was twisted in a rictus of pure, unadulterated malice. You think you won? Vane shrieked. You think you can just take my business and walk away? This is my house. He slammed his hand down on a large red button. Emergency purge protocol initiated. A robotic voice echoed through the room. What did you do? Stone yelled, turning to Vane. I'm scrubbing the site. Vane sneered. Incendiary charges in the foundation. Gas in the vents. If I can't have it, nobody can. The vents hissed. A thick, yellow gas began to pour into the room. Halon? No. Something worse. Nerve agent. Run. Stone shouted at me. Go. I looked at the elevator. It was locked down. Olivia, I screamed into my comms. Get out. Get back to the truck. The house is rigged to blow. Mom, I can't unlock the elevator from here. You're trapped. I looked around. The gas was filling the floor. The shark tank. The glass wall. It led to the ocean. I looked at Stone. He was slumping against the glass. The gas already affecting him. He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw regret. Go, Banshee. He wheezed. Finish the mission. I didn't save him. I couldn't. I grabbed a heavy steel chair from the corner. I ran at the glass wall. I didn't throw the chair. I used my body as a battering ram, driving the chair legs into the glass with every ounce of strength I had left. Crack. A spiderweb fracture appeared. The water pressure behind the glass did the rest. Crash. The wall exploded inward. Thousands of gallons of seawater, and 3 sharks, poured into the room. I was swept up in the torrent. The force was like being hit by a train. I was washed across the room, tumbling through the water, debris, and gas. Stone and Vane were gone. Swallowed by the flood. I held my breath. I fought the current. The water pushed me out through the hole in the wall, out into the open ocean. I plummeted 50 feet down into the dark, churning waves below the cliff. I hit the water hard. Cold, freezing. I kicked to the surface, gasping for air. Above me, Casa del Diablo was burning. Explosions rocked the foundation. The beautiful white mansion crumbled, sliding slowly down the cliffside into the sea. Mom. Olivia's voice was frantic in my ear. Mom, answer me. I treaded water, coughing up salt. My tactical vest was weighing me down. I unclipped it, letting it sink into the abyss. I'm here. Liv, I croaked. I'm in the water. I see you. I see the splash. I'm coming. I'm driving the truck down to the beach access road. I watched the fire above. Julian Vane was dead. Colonel Stone was dead. The ledger was safe in my waterproof pocket. But as I floated there in the dark Pacific, surrounded by the wreckage of my past, I knew it wasn't over. The list. Stone said the buyers were everywhere. I had cut off the head of the snake, but the venom was still in the system. I swam toward the shore. The hunt for my daughter was over. The hunt for the truth had just begun. The Pacific Ocean was cold enough to stop a heart. It wrapped around me like a shroud, heavy and suffocating, pulling me down into the darkness. But I kicked. I fought. I wasn't ready to die. Not yet. I broke the surface, gasping for air that tasted of salt and smoke. Above me, the cliffside was an inferno. Casa del Diablo was gone, reduced to a crumbling skeleton of steel and concrete sliding slowly into the sea. The fire illuminated the black water, turning the waves into molten gold. "Mom." I heard her voice before I saw her. Olivia was wading into the surf, fully clothed, screaming my name. The headlights of the Toyota truck cut through the sea spray, blindingly bright. I swam toward her. My arms felt like lead. My shoulder, where the bullet had grazed the plate, burned with a dull, throbbing ache. My feet touched the sand. I stumbled. Olivia was there instantly. She grabbed me, hauling me up the beach with a strength I didn't know she possessed. "I've got you," she sobbed, her hands gripping my wet tactical vest. "I've got you, Mom." We collapsed on the dry sand, shivering. I coughed up seawater, my lungs burning. I looked at her. Her face was streaked with dirt and tears, her hair matted with sand. She looked terrified, but she was alive. "Are you hurt?" I rasped, checking her arms, her face. "No." She shook her head. "Just scrapes. But you're bleeding everywhere." "It looks worse than it is." I lied. It actually felt worse than it looked. I reached into my waterproof pocket. My fingers closed around the cold metal of the USB drive. It was still there. Colonel Stone's legacy. Julian Vane's insurance policy. "We have to go," I said, forcing myself to stand. "The fire will bring the federales. And if Stone had a backup team, they'll be here in 10 minutes. We scrambled up the dunes to the truck. Olivia drove. I didn't argue. My hands were shaking too hard to hold the wheel. She navigated the dirt roads like a pro, keeping the headlights off until we hit the main highway. We didn't head back to the airstrip. That would be the first place they looked. Instead, we drove south into the chaotic sprawl of Ensenada. We found a motel on the outskirts of the city. La Perla. The neon sign buzzed with a dying fly sound. It was the kind of place that rented rooms by the hour and didn't ask for ID. Perfect. We paid cash for a room at the back. Inside, it smelled of stale tobacco and lemon cleaner. There was a single bed with a polyester spread and a flickering TV bolted to the wall. I sat on the edge of the bed and began to peel off my gear. The tactical vest, heavy with water. The combat boots. The black shirt, stiff with salt and dried blood. "Sit still," Olivia ordered. She had brought the first aid kit from the truck. She cleaned the graze on my shoulder with alcohol. I hissed through my teeth. "Sorry," she whispered. "It's okay. You're doing great." She stitched the cut on my forehead. Her hands were steady. "When did you learn to do this?" I asked, watching her face. "YouTube," she said, a ghost of a smile touching her lips. "Finals week last year. My roommate stepped on a broken glass. We couldn't afford the copay." I laughed, but it turned into a cough. "Remind me to increase your allowance." "Mom," she said, tying off the suture. She sat back, looking at me with serious eyes. "Who was that man? The one in the uniform. You called him Marcus." I looked away, staring at the peeling wallpaper. He was my commanding officer. I said quietly, 10 years ago, we served in Syria together. I trusted him with my life. I trusted him with the lives of my team. And he was part of this? He was the architect. He used his clearance, his connections, he built a pipeline. He used military transport planes to move assets. I couldn't say the word girls. It made it too real. It made me think of the cages in the basement. Why? Money, power, ideology. Maybe he just lost his soul somewhere in the desert and decided to fill the void with greed. It doesn't matter now. He's dead. But you said there were others. Olivia said. She pointed to the USB drive sitting on the nightstand. It looked innocuous. Just a small piece of plastic and metal. You said he had a list. I picked it up. Can you open it? Olivia took the drive. She opened her laptop, the ruggedized machine Moses had given us. It's probably encrypted with a military-grade key, she said, plugging it in. Stone wouldn't leave this open. A password prompt appeared on the screen. Enter credentials. I can try a brute force attack, Olivia said, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. But if it has a kill switch, 3 wrong tries and the data wipes itself. Don't guess, I said, think like him. Stone was arrogant. He was sentimental about his glory days. I closed my eyes, remembering the man Marcus Stone used to be. Before the corruption. Try Archangel, I said. It was the name of our first operation together. The one that got him his silver star. Olivia typed it in. Access denied. 2 attempts remaining. Damn, I cursed. Okay, try Damascus. That was where he was stationed when his wife died. Olivia typed. Access denied. 1 attempt remaining. The screen flashed red. Mom, Olivia whispered. 1 more try. If we miss, it's gone. Everything is gone. I paced the small room. The floor was sticky. What would a man like Stone use as the key to his darkest secrets? He had looked at me in the bunker. He had said, I see retirement hasn't softened you. He had called me by my call sign. He was obsessed with the unit. With the betrayal. With me. Try Banshee, I said. Olivia looked at me. Your call sign? He blamed me for the unit disbanding. I said, he hated me, but he respected me. In his twisted mind, maybe I was the only one worthy of knowing the truth. Olivia took a deep breath. She typed the letters slowly. Banshee. She hit enter. The screen went black for a second. Then, green text began to scroll. Access granted. Welcome, Colonel Stone. Folders appeared, dozens of them. Financials, assets, logistics, clients. Olivia clicked on clients. A spreadsheet opened. It was massive. Thousands of rows. Dates, locations, amounts, and names. We stared at the screen in silence. The hum of the laptop fan sounded like a jet engine in the quiet room. Oh my God, Olivia whispered, her hand covering her mouth. I leaned in, reading the names. There were cartel bosses. Yes, that was expected. But there were others. A CEO of a major tech company in Silicon Valley. A prominent judge in New York. A European diplomat. A senator from Nevada. Senator Caldwell. I read aloud. He's running for governor on a family values platform. Mom, look at this. Olivia clicked on a video file dated 2 weeks ago. It was grainy surveillance footage. It showed a hotel room in Vegas. Senator Caldwell was there, and with him was a girl. She couldn't have been more than 16. I looked away. I couldn't watch. This wasn't just a trafficking ring. This was a blackmail operation. Stone wasn't just selling girls for money. He was recording everything. He was building a library of leverage. He owned these men. He could make them pass laws, drop charges, approve funding, all with a single email. Olivia struggled for words. This is everything. If this gets out, the government will collapse. Or they'll kill us to bury it, I said grimly. I looked at the financials folder. Billions of dollars, funneled through shell companies, offshore accounts in the Caymans, crypto wallets, and one account labeled insurance. It was linked to a deposit box in Zurich. This drive is a nuclear bomb, I said. Stone kept it to protect himself from his own clients. Now we have it. Olivia looked at me. The fear was gone from her eyes, replaced by a cold, hard anger. We can't just give this to the police. Can we? No, I said. Half the police chiefs in Nevada are probably on this payroll. The FBI? Maybe. But who do we trust? If we hand this over to the wrong agent, we disappear before sunrise. So what do we do? I walked to the window and peered through the blinds. The parking lot was empty except for our truck and a stray dog. But I knew that wouldn't last. The moment Stone's heart stopped, a dead man switch might have been triggered. Or Vane's partners would notice the silence. They would come looking for the loose ends. We were the loose ends. We have two choices, I said, turning back to her. Option 1. We destroy the drive. We throw it in the ocean. We go home, change our names, and pray they think we died in the fire. We live in fear for the rest of our lives. And option 2? Olivia asked. Option 2. We finish it. How? We don't just leak the info, I said, my mind racing, formulating a plan. Leaks can be spun. They can be denied. Fake news. Deep fakes. They'll discredit us. I pointed at the screen. We need to hurt them. We need to dismantle the network from the inside out. We use the money to fund our own operation. We use the blackmail to turn their own weapons against them. You want to become vigilantes? Olivia asked. No, I said. I want to be a mother who ensures no other daughter ends up in a cage. I looked at her. But I can't do it alone. I know how to shoot. I know how to fight. But this, I gestured to the laptop. This is a digital war. I'm a dinosaur. Live. I can't fight in this arena. Olivia looked at the screen. She looked at the faces of the girls in the assets folder. She thought about the cage she was in. She thought about the fear. She looked up at me. I can decrypt the financial routing numbers, she said. I can trace the crypto wallets. I can set up a botnet to auto-publish these videos to every news outlet in the world if our heart rates stop. I smiled. A genuine, fierce smile. A dead man switch. I said, I like it. And, she added, I can drain their accounts. We can take their money. All of it. Then let's rob them blind. I said. My phone buzzed. Not the burner phone. That was in the ocean. It was the laptop. A message pop up on an encrypted channel. Unknown sender. I froze. Is that Stone's account? No, Olivia said, typing rapidly. It's incoming. Someone found us. Someone tracked the login. The message appeared on the screen. Hello Banshee. I see you found the cookie jar. Nice work on the house. Very dramatic. Who is this? I asked. Olivia typed. WHO are you? The reply came instantly. A friend. Or maybe just an enemy of your enemy. You have the data. I have the resources. If you want to survive the next 24 hours, do not go to the embassy, they're waiting for you. Head to the marina. Dock 4. Ask for the architect. Is it a trap? Olivia asked. Probably, I said, grabbing my gear. But we're burning daylight. And right now, a trap is better than a firing squad. I put on my wet boots. I holstered the Glock. I looked at the mirror. The cut on my forehead was angry red. My eyes were sunken, but the fire was back. Pack the laptop, I said. We're going to the marina. And then? And then, I said, opening the door to the humid Mexican night. We're going to war. The Ensenada Marina was a graveyard of dreams. Rusting trawlers bobbed next to impounded luxury yachts that had seen better decades. The fog was rolling in off the Pacific, thick and smelling of brine and diesel, wrapping everything in a ghostly gray shroud. We walked down Dock 4, the wooden planks creaking under our feet. I had my hand in my jacket pocket, gripping the Glock 19. Olivia walked beside me, the laptop bag slung across her chest, her eyes darting nervously at the shadows. Stay behind me, I whispered. If I draw, you run. You don't look back. You dive into the water if you have to. I'm not leaving you, she whispered back, stubborn as ever. We reached the end of the dock. A sleek, matte black catamaran was moored there. No lights, no name painted on the hull. It looked like a stealth fighter that had decided to become a boat. Standing on the deck was a man. He was older, maybe 60, wearing a linen suit that was impeccable despite the damp air. He held a cane, but he didn't lean on it. He held it like a weapon. Banshee, he said, his voice smooth, cultured, with a hint of a British accent. And the cub, you look wet. Who are you? I asked, stopping 10 feet away. You said you were a friend. I said I was an enemy of your enemy. He corrected. Nuance is important. Michelle. May I call you Michelle? You can call me whatever you want as long as you keep your hands where I can see them. He smiled. A thin, wintry expression. I am Elias Thorne. In the circles you used to run in, they called me the architect. The name rang a bell. A faint, distant alarm in the back of my mind. The architect. The man who built the financial networks for half the black ops in the Middle East. The man who could move $1 billion without leaving a ripple. You worked for the CIA. I said. Then you went rogue. I went private. Thorne corrected. Much more lucrative, and much less paperwork. I built the network for Julian Vane. I set up the accounts. I designed the encryption. So you're one of them, Olivia said, stepping forward, her voice trembling with anger. You helped them sell girls. Thorne looked at her. His expression softened. Just a fraction. I moved money. My dear, I didn't ask what the commodity was. That was my sin. Willful ignorance. Until Vane decided to cut me out. He tried to have me killed last week in Zurich. He wanted full control. He tapped his cane on the deck. I don't like loose ends. And I don't like betrayal. That is why I contacted you. You have the ledger. I have the key to destroy them. We already have the key, I said, patting my pocket. We cracked it. You cracked the files, Thorne said dismissively. You have names, videos, spreadsheets. But what are you going to do with them? Give them to the FBI? The director of the FBI is on line 42 of that spreadsheet. Give them to the press? The media conglomerates are owned by the men on line 15 and 28. I hesitated. He was right. That was the problem I had been wrestling with since we left the motel. The system was rigged. So what do you suggest? I asked. Thorne gestured to the cabin of the boat. Come aboard. We have a schedule to keep. We boarded. The interior of the catamaran was like a spaceship. Screens, servers, satellite uplinks. Thorne poured himself a brandy. He didn't offer us any. Tonight, he said, pointing to a large monitor on the wall. Senator Caldwell, the man who is currently leading the polls for governor of Nevada, is holding a fundraising gala at the Golden Sands Hotel in Las Vegas. It is being broadcast live to 20 million households. I looked at the screen. It showed a news feed. Caldwell, a new hope for Nevada. The man on the screen was handsome, smiling, holding a baby, the same man I had seen in the video on the USB drive. Doing unspeakable things to a teenager in a hotel room. He is the linchpin, Thorne explained. If he wins, the network gets state-sanctioned protection. They will expand. They will be untouchable. We can't get to him. I said, the Golden Sands will be a fortress. Secret Service, private security, police. We don't need to get to him. Thorne said, we need to get to the feed. He turned to Olivia. You're the hacker, aren't you? I saw your work on Vane's perimeter. Sloppy, but effective. Olivia bristled. It worked. Indeed. Can you inject a signal into a localized broadcast network if you have physical access to the server room? Olivia looked at the specs on the screen. She bit her lip, thinking, if I can get to the main AV control room, yes. I can override the satellite uplink. I can swap their feed with our video files. You want us to hijack the broadcast. I realized. You want to play the evidence live on TV. Exactly. Thorne smiled. No spin, no cover-ups. Just the raw, ugly truth beamed into every living room in America. Once the public sees it, once it's on Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, no amount of money can bury it. It will be the end of Caldwell. The end of the network. But we have to be there. I said, in Vegas. Tonight. I have a plane waiting at a private strip 10 miles from here. Thorne said, a Gulfstream G650. We can be in Vegas in an hour. I have a team on the ground who can get you into the hotel. But the rest, the infiltration, that is up to you. I looked at Olivia. It's dangerous. We're walking back into the fire. We have to, Olivia said. Her eyes were fixed on the image of Senator Caldwell. He's a monster. Mom, we can't let him become governor. I looked at Thorne. Why help us? Why not just do it yourself? Because I am a ghost. Michelle, I don't exist. And frankly, I'm not a soldier. You are. He paused. And perhaps, I want to see the look on their faces when the banshee screams one last time. 2 hours later, Las Vegas, Nevada. The city was exactly as we left it, loud, bright, and indifferent to the suffering it hid. We were in a van parked in the loading dock of the Golden Sands Hotel. Thorne's team turned out to be 2 mercenaries who provided us with uniforms. Catering staff, black trousers, white shirts, bow ties. I checked my earpiece. Comms check. Loud and clear. Olivia whispered. She was sitting in the van, surrounded by monitors. She wasn't coming inside. The risk was too high. I'll guide you to the AV room from here. She said, I've tapped into their schematics. But Mom, once you plug in the drive, I need 3 minutes to bypass the encryption on the uplink. You have to hold the room for 3 minutes. I can do 3 minutes. I said, adjusting my bow tie. I had weapons, but they were concealed. A ceramic knife in my boot. A taser in my pocket. And the Glock 19 taped to the small of my back, hidden under the catering vest. Go, Olivia said. You're on. I grabbed a tray of champagne flutes and stepped out of the van. I walked past the security checkpoint. Badge? The guard grunted. I flashed the fake ID Thorne had provided. Elena Rosales. He scanned it. Beep. Green light. Go ahead. They're waiting for the drinks in the VIP lounge. I walked in. The Golden Sands was opulent. Gold leaf. Crystal chandeliers. Red velvet. The ballroom was packed. Senator Caldwell was on stage, giving a speech about family values and safety. The crowd cheered. I saw faces I recognized from the Ledger. The tech CEO. The judge. They were all there, clapping, smiling, secure in their power. I moved through the crowd, offering drinks. Invisible. Excuse me, sir. Champagne? I made my way to the service corridor behind the stage. Take the left door. Olivia's voice guided me. Down the hall. Third door on the right. AV control. I reached the door. It was guarded. One man. Suit. Earpiece. Secret Service? Or private security? It didn't matter. I approached him. Excuse me, sir? The stage manager asked for water. He looked at me. Bored. Leave it on the table. He said it's urgent. The senator is parched. He sighed and stepped aside to let me open the door. As I passed him, I dropped the tray. Glass shattered. He looked down. Distracted. I struck. Open palm strike to the chin. Upward thrust. His head snapped back. He stumbled. I grabbed his tie, pulled him down, and drove my knee into his face. He collapsed. I dragged him into the room and locked the door. The AV room was small, filled with racks of servers and monitors. 2 technicians were sitting at the console, wearing headsets. They spun around, eyes wide. Hey, you can't be in here. I drew the Glock out. I said, now. They didn't argue. They scrambled out the back exit. I locked that door too. I was alone. I looked at the main console. The broadcast feed was running. Caldwell's face was on every screen. And that is why I promised to clean up the streets of Nevada, he boomed. I'm in, I said to Olivia. Where do I plug it in? Main server rack. Port 3. It should be labeled Uplink Master. I found it. I pulled the USB drive from my pocket, the Ledger. I plugged it in. Okay, Olivia said, her voice tight. I see it. I'm initiating the override. The firewall is tough. Mom, it's fighting back. Give me time. Bang, bang. Someone was pounding on the door. Open up. Security. How long? Live? 2 minutes. The handshake is lagging. The pounding stopped. Then, a gunshot. The lock shattered. The door kicked open. 3 men burst in. Tactical gear. Not police. Vane's leftovers. Or maybe Stone's backup. They saw me. Drop it. I dove behind the server rack as bullets sparked off the metal. I returned fire. Bang, bang. 1 man went down, clutching his leg. The other 2 took cover behind the mixing desk. She's interfering with the broadcast. Kill her. I checked my ammo. 5 rounds. I looked at the screen. A progress bar appeared. Upload. 45%. Mom, I'm getting kicked out. Someone is countering my hack. Olivia yelled. Thorne? I asked. Is he betraying us? No. It's internal. There's another admin on the system. I looked at the console. A red light was blinking. Security override. I had to manually keep the connection open. I had to hold a switch down on the panel. But the switch was in the open. If I moved to the console, I would be exposed. If I stayed in cover, the upload would fail. I looked at the progress bar. 50%. I looked at the men with guns. I looked at Senator Caldwell on the screen, smiling his fake smile. I thought of the cage. I thought of Olivia's face when we found her. I thought of all the girls who didn't have a mother like me. Cover me. Liv, I whispered, though I knew she couldn't. I took a deep breath. I stood up. I fired 3 shots, suppressing the guards for a split second. I sprinted to the console. I slammed my hand down on the override switch. Upload, 75%. A bullet struck my side. Pain exploded in my ribs. I grunted but didn't let go. Upload, 85%. Another bullet hit the console. Inches from my hand, sparks flew into my face. Mom, Olivia screamed. Almost there. I gritted my teeth. Blood was soaking through my white shirt. The guard stood up, aiming his rifle at my head. Goodbye, bitch. Upload, 99%. I looked him in the eye. Smile. I said, you're on TV. Upload, 100%. The screens in the room flickered. The image of Senator Caldwell froze. Then, it changed. Static. And then, the video from the hotel room. The sound of Caldwell's voice. Not giving a speech, but laughing cruelly. The face of the terrified girl. In the ballroom, 20 million people gasped. On the stage, Caldwell turned around, saw the giant screen behind him, and his face went white. The guard in front of me hesitated. He looked at the screen. He looked at me. Distraction. I raised my gun. Bang. He dropped. I slumped against the console. Sliding to the floor, my hand left the switch. It didn't matter. The signal was out. The virus was spreading. Every phone, every tablet, every TV tuned into the broadcast was now playing the contents of the ledger. The names, the bank accounts, the videos. Mom? Mom. Olivia's voice was crying in my ear. I did it. Liv, I whispered, pressing my hand to my bleeding side. We did it. The door to the AV room burst open again. But this time, it wasn't mercenaries. It was FBI. Federal agents. Drop the weapon. I let the Glock slide from my fingers. I raised my bloody hands. I looked at the screen one last time. Chaos in the ballroom. Caldwell was being tackled, not by security, but by angry donors. The world was watching the truth. I smiled. I closed my eyes. The mission was complete. The silence in the AV room was heavier than the gunfire that had preceded it. My hands were raised, blood dripping from my fingertips onto the pristine linoleum floor. The FBI agents were shouting orders, "Don't move." Hands where I can see them, but their voices sounded distant. Like they were underwater. All I could hear was the hum of the servers and the frantic voice of my daughter in my earpiece. Mom, they're coming in. I see them on the cameras. Don't do anything stupid, please. I looked at the lead agent. He wasn't looking at me with the usual aggression of a federal raid. He was looking at the screen behind me. He was watching the collapse of a senator's career and the exposure of a global criminal network. He lowered his weapon slightly. In his eyes, I saw confusion, and then recognition. He knew who I was. Not the criminal. The whistleblower. Michelle Carter, he said, his voice firm but not shouting. I need you to step away from the console. Slowly. I nodded. My legs felt like water. The adrenaline that had sustained me for 48 hours was draining away, leaving only pain. The bullet wound in my side was a hot poker of agony. I took a step. The room spun. The floor rushed up to meet me. Darkness took me before I hit the ground. 72 hours later. I woke up to the smell of antiseptic and the beep of a heart monitor. I was in a hospital room, handcuffed to the bedrail. Standard procedure. I turned my head. Olivia was sitting in the chair next to the bed. She was asleep, curled up in an uncomfortable position, head resting on her arms. She looked exhausted, but clean. No more dirt, no more blood. I watched her breathe for a long time. Just the rise and fall of her chest. It was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. She refused to leave, a voice said from the doorway. I looked up. Elias Thorne, the architect, was standing there. He was wearing a different suit. This one navy blue, holding a fedora. He looked like a concerned grandfather visiting a sick relative. Except for the two FBI agents standing guard outside the door who seemed to be ignoring him completely. "How are you here?" I croaked. My throat was dry as sandpaper. Thorne walked over and poured a glass of water from the pitcher. He held the straw to my lips. "I have very good lawyers, Michelle. And I have very influential friends who are currently very grateful that their names were not on the scrolling ticker tape on CNN." I drank greedily. "The broadcast?" "It worked," Thorne said, a hint of a smile playing on his lips. "Senator Caldwell was arrested on stage. The governor has resigned. There have been raids in New York, London, and Zurich. The Ledger effectively decapitated the Hydra." "And the charges against me?" I rattled the handcuffs. "Aggravated assault, breaking and entering, illegal possession of firearms, cyber-terrorism, grand theft auto." Thorne listed them casually. "You racked up quite a score." "So I'm going to prison?" "Under normal circumstances, yes. You'd be looking at life without parole." Thorne pulled a chair closer. "But these are not normal circumstances. You see, the Department of Justice has a problem. If they put you on trial, you testify. If you testify, everything comes out. Things that even the Ledger didn't show. CIA involvement, black budgets, the full, ugly anatomy of the state." He leaned in. "They don't want a trial, Michelle. They want silence." "What are you saying?" "I brokered a deal," Thorne said. "You and Olivia. Total immunity. All charges dropped. The official story is that you were acting as a confidential informant for the FBI during an undercover operation that went volatile." I stared at him. "Just like that? We walk away?" "Not quite." Thorne reached into his jacket and pulled out a thick envelope. He placed it on the bed. "You're dead, Michelle. Michelle Carter, the fitness instructor from Ohio. Died in Mexico. The woman in this bed is someone else. New identities, new history, a fresh start. But there is a condition." "Which is?" "You disappear. You never speak to the press. You never write a book. You fade into the ghost world." I looked at Olivia, still sleeping peacefully. I thought about the PTA meetings, the kickboxing classes, the simple, boring life I had tried so hard to build. It was gone. I could never go back to being normal. I knew too much. I had done too much. "We take the deal," I whispered. Thorne nodded. He stood up and patted my hand. "Good choice. There is a car waiting in the garage. The agents outside have been instructed to look the other way for exactly 10 minutes during the shift change." He turned to leave. "Thorne," I called out. He stopped. "Why?" I asked. "You didn't have to do this. You got what you wanted. Vane is dead." Thorne put on his hat. He looked at me. And for a second, the mask of the cold, calculated mastermind slipped. Because everyone deserves a second act. Banshee. Even monsters like us. 1 week later. The highway stretched out before us. A ribbon of asphalt cutting through the red rocks of the Arizona desert. The sun was setting, painting the sky in violent shades of purple and orange. The same colors that had welcomed us to Vegas a lifetime ago. I was driving. Not an Aston Martin. Not a stolen truck. A modest, reliable SUV, paid for with cash from a bank account that didn't exist a week ago. My side still ached, and I moved a little slower. But the pain was manageable. It was a reminder, a scar to add to the collection. Olivia sat in the passenger seat. She had cut her hair short, a bob that made her look older. Sharper. She was typing on a new laptop. "We have a deposit," she said, not looking up. "The offshore accounts from Vane's network. I rerouted the orphaned funds before the feds froze them. It's a lot, Mom." "How much is a lot?" "Enough to buy an island. Or start a war." I smiled, shaking my head. "No more wars. Liv, we're retired." "Are we?" She looked at me. Her eyes were different now. The innocence was gone, replaced by a steeliness that mirrored my own. Thorne sent me a file. An encrypted message. "Delete it. It's a list, Mom. Not the buyers. The other girls. The ones who were moved before we hit the compound. Vane had a secondary hub in Southeast Asia." I gripped the steering wheel. My knuckles turned white. I looked at the road ahead. I could keep driving. We could go to Montana. Buy a cabin. Fish in the river. Forget the world existed. That was the deal. That was the dream. But then I thought about the cage. I thought about the mother out there. Somewhere. Who was looking at an empty bedroom. Wondering if her daughter was still alive. I wasn't just Michelle Carter anymore. I wasn't just a mother. I was the banshee. And I had a cub who knew how to hunt. I looked at Olivia. "How many?" I asked. 12, she said. "Confirmed locations." I sighed. A long, heavy sigh that carried the weight of the world. But when I looked back at the road, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Purpose. "Southeast Asia is nice this time of year," I said quietly. Olivia smiled. It was a sharp, dangerous smile. "I'll book the tickets." I pressed the gas pedal. The SUV surged forward, chasing the dying light of the sun. The nightmare in Vegas was over. But the world was full of monsters. And someone had to hunt them.